good evening, and welcome to the Pac-12 Chat Show Live here on the Voice of College Football. My name is Tony Altimore, and we are here with a group of Pac-12 alums to chat about Pac-12 football. Now, this show is all about you guys, and so we want to make sure that you guys are getting involved. So there's a couple ways that you guys can interact with us. First, you can join us on the calls. So we're going to go through the games. Then after the game, we're going to open it up to callers, and we want to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys think about the games. Second, you can join us for live chat. So in the chat window, tell us what you think. Give us your opinions on the game and fill us in on what you think is going on with the Pac-12. Third, you can engage with us on Twitter. So our Twitter handles are all in our profiles. You can reach out, ping us. I'm TJ Altimore, but you can ping any of us and tell us what you think, and we'll read it live on the air. Fourth, if you love the show, you can always give us a super chat or reach out. There are links for PayPal and Venmo and stuff like that. If that's easier, we appreciate it because we appreciate everything that helps support the entire Voice of College Football program. So without further ado, let me bring on the team. Guys, welcome to the Pac-12 Chat Show Live. Give a quick introduction to yourselves.
Hi, I'm Tim Prangley, USC alum.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for joining. Rick and I go by LBC Trojan, also an SC alum.
And I'm Chris, UCLA alum.
All right, guys, let's get into it this week. Now, one of the things we talked about on our USC post-game live game last week was Colorado was burning. And Colorado officially burned down. Head coach Karl Dorrell fired by athletic director Rick George over the week. Guys, there's a lot of heat around Colorado. It's not just as the coach. Questions are abounding. The Denver papers are shrieking that the problems at Colorado are CEO-level problems that need CEO-level solutions. And entrusting the same guy who let the program mire into its current terrible state may not be the one to help bring it out. What do you guys think about the mess in Boulder?
It is a mess, obviously. I'm kind of disappointed because, I wanted to see Dorrell ride out the full season, see if he could go full 0-12 experience, but I think they're going to get there anyway. It is it's interesting because I think like the story coming out of there now is that like, the guy went to Michigan State, so we had to hire at the last minute, and this is what we could get, and it filled the job and fine, kind of like, throwing the hire out and saying like, oh, this is the best we could do at that time, instead of, taking sort of upper level of responsibility for what occurred. So I don't know what they do this time around and if they can fix it, but the way they're acting about it, it was like almost like they threw up their hands like, oh, this was the best we could do at the time, like in hindsight, rather than actually figuring it out and making a better hire at the time. They kind of throwing the blame game around, which makes me just think that like there's some validity to upper level management issues, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's the surprising thing. The AD Rick George still has a job, right? I don't know how the AD at Colorado survives that hire, but I think they did Karl Dorrell a favor because by going out now, he goes out a winner, a record of 43-42 career. This way, saving him from having a negative record probably if he'd stay the rest of the year. What do you think, Rick?
I think they're a program that obviously is in disarray, and you have to look at it from a financial and organizational, I think, structure. I don't think they have alignment there. The fact that you're throwing up your hands, I don't think they're really committed to football. I don't think they have the financial resources that's there. They did lose Mel Tucker, and they lost him to the Big Ten. And that's one of the challenges that Pac-12 coaches have, is getting poached. Good coaches getting poached by other conferences with more money, with schools with more money. But I think they hired the wrong guy. I was very surprised they hired Karl Dorrell, and they put a Band-Aid on a problem that probably needs a tourniquet. Honestly, they have to get this right. But now they're faced with other challenges. You can throw your hands up again, but There's rumor that they're going to go to another conference. So that's a challenge there. Who's going to really want to take this job? You're going to have to find somebody that's an up and comer. And I don't know if Colorado is prepared to find that person or is equipped to find that person.
Well, I think you're right. And, again, my big question there, and something I've said is really, some of you guys have seen me, we've talked about it on Twitter with some of you guys. I think it's really an issue for Colorado's president, Todd Salomon. Their chancellor has been there for 20 years, where Colorado has failed to advance athletically or academically. Colorado has not prospered as an institution over the past 20 years. I mean, Colorado is pretty much, as an institution, where it was in 2000, and certainly no better than it was in 2010, 2012 when they joined the Pac-12. And that is not good. Colorado is a storied, important athletic institution. And I'll tell you guys, I really think, like I said, they have CEO level problems that need CEO level solutions. And it may be time to clean house. I was really impressed with what Georgia Tech did. Georgia Tech went in, fired the athletic director, fired the coach, walked them both to their cars and booted them from campus. And the president took his right-hand guy, his chief of staff and strategy man, and put him in charge of the athletic department until they get somebody else in. And, this may sound harsh, but I think Colorado needs to think about doing the same. That dumpster fire is not Carl Durrell's fault. It's his boss and his boss's fault. All right. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, guys, let's move on to some games. Colorado's got a bye, so we'll see what they can do over that bye time. But who doesn't have a bye? The Oregon State Beavers, reeling from 2 straight losses, the tough loss to USC and a drubbing in Salt Lake City, are playing Stanford, who is also dealing with a pretty serious drubbing. And finally, live at Stanford Stadium, we are going to be able to see the revelation of the new Stanford tree. What do you guys think? Can the Beavs shut down the Cardinal, or are we going to see a little surprise?
So it's interesting. We were just talking about Carl Durrell getting fired, and no one's shocked at that. I think people would be surprised if David Shaw got fired, just because of the way people think of Stanford as an institution and his place there. But there's actually been some rumblings about through people I would trust that say that situation may not be as safe for David Shaw as people, even including myself, would assume. And that seat might be, I'm not saying it's scorching on fire, but it might be a little bit warmer than people think. So Oregon State has a little bit, talking about the game itself, Oregon State has a little bit of a quarterback problem right now, right? You have Chance Nolan, who threw 4 picks against SC, then started the game off last week against Utah, throwing 2 more in the first quarter, and then went out with an injury. He's apparently day-to-day. Then, the other guy came in, Ben Goldbranson, I can't pronounce his name. He threw 2 more interceptions. Oregon State needs to take care of the ball. I think last week everyone thought that game against Utah, that was a tough spot. And they actually moved, to their credit, they moved the ball very well. I think that game was a little bit closer than people think. I want to say it was it was a 17-point game at one point in the third. 7-point game at one point in the third quarter. I think a 15-point game.
Clint on the screen just pointed out how close it was at halftime.
Right, exactly. It was a close game at half. It was close midway through the third quarter, and then Oregon State's going down, driving again to make it, I think, a 6-point game around there. Throw another pick in the end zone and have it returned for 70 more yards. And then all of a sudden it's 35-16 and, it's kind of out of reach at that point. I think that, Jonathan Smith's a great coach, and I think that he can right the ship. They got to take care of the ball. But they moved it on a good Utah defense. They just turned it over a bundle and didn't score any points, which obviously you don't get points for moving the ball. You have to score. It's part of the game. But it wasn't as bad as it looked in the final score. So I think that Oregon State bounces back here. I think there can be some worries for some teams that Tanner McGee, the Stanford quarterback, shows up randomly one week and just wills them to victory because he's a talent. But I don't think it's against this Oregon State defensive backfield, which we talked about a ton after their great performance against USC. So I just don't see this as the week that Stanford rises up and beats someone. I think the Beavs right the ship, even though it's only like a 7-point spread or something. Yeah, I think the Beavs take it.
I agree with you, Chris. I think this is a game that Oregon State's going to bounce back. They do have a question at quarterback, but they have a strong running game, strong offensive line. They're very similar to Stanford teams of old. Tanner McKee's a great quarterback at Stanford, but he doesn't really have a running game to complement his passing game. And I like Oregon State's physical secondary. I see this a low scoring game where Oregon State's going to control the ball, and they're going to cash in and they're going to force some turnovers. Stanford is still DFL in turnover margin, number 131, and they're giving up nearly, I think their turnover margin is like -2.5. So I think you're going to see a ball control offense by Oregon State. They're going to, pound the ball and force some turnovers for Stanford. It's going to be a close game, but I see Oregon State winning this game 24-17. How about you, Tim? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, OSU's gone up against some pretty good secondaries. The USC secondary doesn't get the credit it deserves, but even though it's leading the country, I believe, or at least up there in interceptions this year. And then you've got two preseason all Pac-12 guys over in Phillips and Bishop on Utah. So I mean, the passing game has given up a lot of interceptions, and I'm with you on the fact that score doesn't reflect it. Anytime you throw interceptions in the end zone from inside the 10, two of them, and one of them was one inside the 10, and the other one you throw for a pick six. Sorry, you're not gonna be winning a lot of games. And so that was the problem with this with the Oregon so far. But we're talking about Stanford now, and Caillou Blue Kelly, I think, is a great corner for Stanford. Beyond that, their defense is horrible. I see for the Beavers offense getting back on track. And I see them winning this one actually pretty big. I'm thinking it's going to be 33-16.
Tim, I think that's probably a pretty safe bet. We want Stanford to be good because we love Stanford. We have a friend of the show, Stanford Tree. We love David Shaw. We like everything the school stands for. Tanner McKee's awesome. We also, everybody on our show and in our audience respects Oregon State a lot. But I agree with you. I don't think Stanford has the horses to keep up. And I think this becomes, somebody in the chat said this becomes a get right game for Oregon State. So we'll see what the Beavs do. Next up to bat, we've got an interesting game here. Arizona State certainly has been a bit. They looked better under their interim coach than they have all season long. And Washington is coming off a tough loss to UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Guys, what's going on with the resurgent Washington, who took a step back, and the dumpster fire ASU, who kind of took a step forward? What do we think with this game?
I think that Washington is I'm going to keep it pretty short on this one, but I think that Washington is a better team. I think we matched up pretty well against them and surprised some people in certain ways. But I would be very surprised if ASU is in this game, or even necessarily makes it look as close as they did against USC.
I think this is a bounce back game for Washington, even though they've had over the past decade troubles going down to the desert. But this is a different Washington team, strong defensively. They've got a diversified offense. You've got Penix throwing the rock. Arizona State will give them a battle the first half. I like their secondary. They're physical, but Washington just has too much. Arizona State doesn't really take care of the ball. Emory Jones, not a great passer. I mean, he'll dink and dunk on the run. He will keep defenses honest for a certain point of time, but I think Washington figures him out, contains him, and I see Washington winning this game 38-25.
Ooh, I'm really close to you, Rick. I got my score at 34-24 in favor of Washington. I do think Washington comes back. I don't think that Washington had a hard time. I don't know, just getting in sync. It seemed like against with UCLA, and UCLA's got that hot start. I don't think that Emory Jones could be able to repeat what DTR can do on the field. So I looked at that Husky defense shouldn't look so bad as they did against UCLA. But I see a nice, although ASU will cover, I see 34-24 Washington.
All right, we've got Husky fan Sergeant Pickles, and good friend of the show joining us. Sergeant Pickles, what do you think about your dogs this week?
Oh, I'm still coming over a rough one from last week. Full credit to the Bruins. They looked really good, and they made all of the good parts of our defense look pretty mediocre. This is, not quite a get-right game because I don't think the final score against UCLA makes it seem close. They did have, a hope and a prayer late, but UCLA controlled that game, and they kind of willed themselves back into it. I'm surprised to see a 14.5-point line. I know ASU has got all sorts of other problems going on. This, to me, feels like UW probably has a slow start. I don't know if they've quite got their footing on the road, but they're going to have a slow start, and then they'll kind of build as the game goes on. I do see them winning by probably 2 touchdowns. So hard to say if they cover the spread or not, but I think this is one they really got to control and, overcome mistakes, really get that monkey off their back for playing on the road.
It's certainly going to be an interesting one. I'll tell you something about Washington. And Sergeant Pickles, tell me your thoughts on this. We talked just a little minute ago about Colorado and how Colorado has CEO-level problems that needed CEO-level solutions. One thing I've been tremendously impressed with Washington in the past year and a half is kind of how they took charge and fixed that. From President Anamari Kautsy to Athletic Director Jen Cohen, bringing in Kalen DeBoer, really focusing on finding somebody that they thought was a great person and a great leader who had won at all levels in his history. Right now we're seeing a lot of folks just yapping about the same 5 candidates, for every coaching job. Jen Cohen went out and found a coach that had been successful at lower levels and decided she was going to bring in a winner. What do you think about Kalen DeBoer so far?
Well, full credit to Jen Cohen, because with Jimmy Lake, we all kind of knew writing was on the wall. It wasn't going well, and it turned in a hurry. But she was pretty decisive in saying, look, it's time to move on, immediately identified candidates and kind of got that process going. So there wasn't some of this kind of waffling around you see at other programs, or maybe where they let it go on a little longer than it should. Kalen DeBoer, he fit the bill. Everyone, you either get the recycle coaches from other big programs or you take a shot on a guy. And I was super impressed, seeing the way, Fresno beat UCLA the year before. So he's obviously got a good resume. He's won everywhere he's been. And he's also got those philosophies that have worked at every level, because I think it was Sioux Falls and then Fresno and Indiana back to Fresno. He's had success, so it seems to be something that really translates, and I think you're definitely seeing that with Penix, but also the offense in general.
I think so too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say it's just that you can see also that connection, that familiarity with Penix and DeBoer, and it's going to be, and it's offensive line really, Pickles. You guys keep him in a nice clean pocket. He's got the arm talent to sling it around, but it just looked like UCLA, he just didn't look comfortable. Did you get that feeling watching the game?
I do think he maybe made some questionable decisions, but UCLA has the athletes to exploit an offensive line that isn't really cohesive, and that was what completely doomed the season last year. Is UW lost it, and the Lions, they were getting bull rushed every single play practically, and you saw a little bit of that crop back up. I think it's definitely something they can identify and learn from, so that you're not seeing this later on in the year. I don't think it's necessarily like beyond saving. But yeah, when Penix is clean and he's making good decisions, we've seen him sling it down the field. And you saw a little bit of that against UCLA. But when it gets real messy, sometimes he makes the wrong call or the bad throw. And, it only takes one pick or one fumble to really turn the game.
Well, and you guys, I think this is going to be a really interesting game because ASU interim coach Sean Aguano has really come in and changed a lot of things. Sean Aguano, much like Kalen DeBoer, Sean Aguano was actually one of the most famous, revered high school coaches in Arizona, coming out of Chandler High School. Coached a couple years as an assistant, just like Joey McGuire at Texas Tech. Came into ASU and immediately said, okay, the Herm Edwards nonsense of this like CEO coach that doesn't actually coach is over, and discipline's getting fixed, plays getting fixed. We're getting rid of penalties, and I think it really showed in the USC games. I think it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens here as we get the Dogs and the Devils.
Another thing I love about this game, it's, we just talked about Colorado and the problems they're having there. The other school that doesn't have a coach, obviously, is ASU. And ASU, as we talked about before, is this sleeping giant. Their leadership is a dumpster fire. Michael Crow has a higher expectation of himself than what his performance is. He's one of those guys who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. That's my opinion. And he hires Ray Anderson. They're going to have this NFL style type of program, and they're going to change the dynamic in the Pac-12. They're going to be leaders. And they hired Herm Edwards, and we all know what happened. And yet here you got Washington that's got a bunch of, it's a huge brand that's been very successful over time, that has won a lot of Rose Bowls, is one of the best teams in the Pac-10 and the Pac-12 for years. Okay, and they had an issue with a coach and Jimmy Lake, and they had the leadership out and make a decision on DeBoer and stick with it. And look what happened in year one. So that's got to tick off Michael Crow and Ray Anderson. You know what? Rightly so. Take a lesson, guys. Step it up and become that giant that is no longer sleeping in the desert. Good luck.
Rick, I think you're right. I will give Michael Crow a little bit of a shout out, though, because over the past 20 years that he's been in charge, Arizona State has done amazing things academically, whereas Colorado has done nothing in any regard, from what I can tell.
Well, I think that's really nice of you, Tony, but he's an enabler. He enabled Larry Scott. He negotiated an extension. So, hey, I have no love for
you have no love for Dr. Crow.
Eat that crow, Michael Crow. And enjoy getting, boat raced by the Huskies.
All right, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting one. All right, next up to bat, guys. We got an interesting game here because Oregon is looking all of a sudden like the team that we thought they were. All of us, the whole season. Certainly, we had some unpleasantness in their first game. They got boat raced by Georgia. Now Oregon's back. Oregon's surging, and they're heading into the desert. And a lot of you guys know, every team has sort of places where they're cursed. The desert has been a rough place for Oregon, and you guys remember, going back even to the 90s, wild things happen at night in the desert. So what do we think here? Oregon and Arizona. Do the Wildcats have a chance?
Real quick, Tony, I'll go ahead and hop off so you guys can bring other people on. But I hope this is a massive trap game for the Quackers. We'll see how that goes. We'll see
going into the bye.
We'll see.
That's why we left you on. We figured there'd be some good dog opinion for this.
Yeah, we'll see if the Jekyll or Hyde Bo Nix shows up. I'm hoping it's the bad one. But that's all I got. I do think I think Arizona's kind of underrated, so I could see this actually being a pretty interesting game. I don't think they're totally over their skis, but it is definitely tough to keep up with Oregon when they're firing on all cylinders. So that's all I got, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs. All right. Talk to you later, Sergeant Pickles. Thanks for joining us. All right, guys. What do you guys think here? The cats or the dogs? The cats or the ducks? Sorry. Excuse me.
I would love to be so scary that Oregon is looking past Arizona and past the bye to when they play us, but I don't think this is quite the trap game because they don't have another. They have the bye next week, and then they play us at home, UCLA at home. This is like the start of a very rough stretch in the schedule for Arizona, where they play 5 currently ranked teams in a row. All the teams that are ranked, that's their next 5 games. And then their 6th game is against WSU, who is technically 26th in the polls, right? So the Wildcats are probably going to need, like, good luck to them because they're probably going to need it over the course of the next 6 weeks. I think it's going to be rough. They're feeling good, after being the most recent team to have the pleasure of playing Colorado. But I think it's going to get real quick. Oregon last week cruised by Stanford. It was like 31-3 at the half. Bo Nix is, continuing to play pretty well. People talk about Jekyll and Hyde Bo Nix, but for the most part this year, he has looked like a pretty good quarterback. And I don't see any reason that stops here. Colorado, by the way, had 5 yards a rush against Sona, which is the most they've had all year. And Jaden Ott had a field day against Arizona where we thought Cal might even have like their line issues fixed. The Arizona Cal game gave Cal fans a ton of hope that, they had figured out how to get a push and move the ball and run the ball, and Jaden Ott's going to take over. And then the very next week against Wazoo, it kind of gets shut down. So I think this Arizona team is, like you were saying, Tony, a little bit more like what we thought they were, even though they showed up early in the season. And unfortunately for them, they play the 6 best teams in the conference the next 6 games. And I think things are going to be real hard. And I think Oregon wins by 3 touchdowns.
Chris, bring in the analysis. I love it, brother. And I think one of the things you mentioned is that Arizona they're going to play 5 ranked teams in the next 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Yeah, let's touch upon that. The Pac-12 has 5 teams now ranked in the AP Top 25. It was a conference that didn't get a lot of respect, and rightly so, because when preseason rankings come out, a lot of the sports writers look in the rearview mirror, look what happened last year, kind of project what's going to happen this year. And the Pac-12 had 3 ranked teams. Now they have 5. They're actually, if you look at that, they're outperforming the Big 12, the Big 10, and the ACC, because the Big 10 started with 4 preseason ranked teams, and now they have 2 this week. And 2 of the teams in the Pac-12 have taken out Michigan State and Wisconsin. We talked about that, last week. If you look at the ACC, they had 5 preseason teams, including Miami, and now they have 3 in Week 6. They have, Clemson, North Carolina State, Wake Forest. You look at the Big 12; they had 3 preseason AP Top 25 teams, including Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's the last one standing in that group. They have 4 teams currently ranked in the top 25, including Kansas State, the Jayhawks, perfect 5-0, and then also TCU, who did a number on OU last year. So just giving a little shout out to the Pac-12, taking a look at kind of a midpoint of the season, and things are playing well. So getting to the game, I see a little bit differently than you, Chris, because Oregon has had its nightmare in the desert, as Tony pointed out. If you take a look at the last game since 2013, the last 7 times they've played, their record, Oregon's record is 3-4 against Arizona, and they're 0-2 in the desert. And those desert games weren't close. In 2018, they lost 44-15, and in 2013, they lost 42-16. Now, I get it. Those were different teams at a different time. But one of the things that's troubling, if you look at it, Oregon's pass defense is rated 119 in the country. They give up 282.2 yards a game, nearly 300 yards a game just in passing. So you look at Delora and the receivers that he has, and they're going to be jacked in the desert. They're going to have the crowd going. He's going to be juiced. He's going to get some completions, and they're going to put some pressure on that Oregon defense. And then Bo Nix is Bo Nix, and he's going to have to get basically trade touchdowns with Arizona, because once they start rolling, they're a different team in the desert, and they don't fear Oregon. They do not fear Oregon at all. But I think this team, Oregon, they're going to have enough. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a field goal game, and I see Oregon winning this one 45-42.
Ooh, that's scoring game. Yeah. When I looked at this game initially, I thought right away just Oregon's gonna roll. I remember Ben, exploring with Ben. He talks about just his worries about going down to the desert, kind of what you just talked about, Rick, and how they've had some struggles going down to the desert in the past. You're looking at the 119th passing defense in the country when you talk about Oregon. And Jaden Delora has shown us when he was up at Washington State and in some recent games that he could sling it, and he definitely can throw the ball. Matter of fact, he is, I believe, second in the conference in passing, so in yards per game. So he has his connection with Cowing, and these two have been catching it and lighting up all year. I know that Oregon has the athletes, but Arizona's done a lot. They got a sharp tight end, the kid from Servite, and they have the ability to put up points. I'm coming this close to calling the upset, but I'm going to chicken out, and I'm going to say 41-37 Oregon, but they do not cover.
Can I make a quick comment about a comment in the chat? D4 brought up something hilarious. D4, I love you, brother. He says, Pac-12 fans have a Napoleon complex. LOL, don't badmouth it, or I'm going to give you 50 reasons why other conferences suck. Hey, man, when you're the little red-headed stepchild for like the last 5 years, and you've had a lousy bowl record, you have a lousy TV contract, nobody wants to show your games, they play late at night. Yeah, you know what? It's a redheaded stepchild, not Napoleon complex. Let's get this straight. It's redheaded stepchild. I'm just pointing out facts. I think the voice of college football, Mark Rogers, talks about the facts. I'm not going on emotion. I'm just pointing out what the sports writers are showing in their poll. If those numbers punch you in the gut and hit you in the face and they don't make you feel good, then that's fine. Daryl MVP had a comment, when are we going to talk about the SEC? Hey, Daryl, the SEC is on a different tier. I'm not going to be poking the bear. I'm just comparing us to the other four conferences, the three conferences, us four, that are competing with the SEC. There is no competition. The SEC is king. But the other three conferences, hey, the numbers say differently.
Well, and it's really easy. It's really the answer there for you, Daryl. If you want to hear about the SEC, just close your eyes and pick a website, and they'll be talking about the SEC because that's all they ever do. So you'll have plenty of
guys. And I like Chris's reminder to our beloved good friend D4. Of course, you guys know I believe Texas is back, but he's pointing out Bruins can't hear him from up there in the standings. I like it.
And you guys are missing the point, dude. He's joking. He's just messing with all you guys.
We love D4.
He always does that. So.
D4 is the greatest. He's our favorite.
Keep on stirring that pot because I like that chili. Tastes good.
All right, guys, moving on. We've got one of the two big games of the week. We've got Utah and UCLA. Guys, the Rose Bowl may be rocking. What do we think?
I hope Larry Pilgrim comes on later to talk about Utah as well.
If Larry Pilgrim, if you're out there, let me know. We'd love to have you come on and
give some bias to this. I'm gonna take my USC Wazoo time and use it now. So in case it wasn't clear to anyone after last week that 2022 DTR is not 2020 or 2019 DTR. Hopefully it should be. And I know Utah fans probably think of DTR. I think the last time DTR actually played Utah was in 2019. And I think we got boat raced, and I think he had a terrible game. But it's not the same player that it was 3 years ago. The Utes have, in fact, won 5 straight against UCLA. But there's times to be an even-keeled analyst of the game, and there's times to be an unapologetic homer. And right now is the time to be an unapologetic homer. So per the Equity Bruin on Twitter, he made a good point. He pointed out that Utah is 23-2 in their last 25 in Salt Lake City, but in the same time frame is only 17-16 outside of Salt Lake City in the same time period. Bill Connolly at SE Plus has this game as basically like a coin flip. I don't think we already talked about it already against Oregon State, but that game was 16-21 in the third quarter. With Oregon State driving, went down 16-28 before they threw the pick. I don't think that game was like as big of a blowout as people think. I think this is a good Utah team, like a very good Utah team. I think it's probably the best team in the conference. Maybe Oregon is. I'm just gonna stop there. And Carl Phillips is a beast. But again, like if 2022 DTR continues to show up and take care of the ball like he has, I think our offense can move the ball on anyone. So I'm taking the Bruins to win this game by a touchdown.
I love this game. This is going to be a great game. And I think you're going to see the Rose Bowl filled up the most it's been this year because those Utah fans are coming. They love this place. They lost a close one to Ohio State last year, and they want to come out a winner in this one. And Oregon's got a very good defensive team. They're number 6 in the country. They give up under 250 yards a game. They've got a good offense with Rising, and their running game, physical. But UCLA's coming on. And we saw what happened to Utah when they were on a big stage against a mobile quarterback in AR-15 down in Florida. You know why we know that? Because SEC fans keep on reminding us. And they're going to remind us all the way until bowl selection day. Because that's who they are. That's who they are. And I think Utah is going to have to figure out DTR. They've got a great running back in Charbonnet. And they've got this grad transfer wide receiver. I think he's 6'5", 6'6", Bobo. And so they put it on display against Washington. And they're going to have to solve that equation. And
we're by far the best. We're the best offense that Utah has played against this year.
Yes. But this is going to be like Rice-Eccles West. They came to the Rose Bowl last year. They're going to come again, but at the end of the day, UCLA is going to give them a game. This is going to be a close game, and Utah's going to squeak it out by a field goal. I see Utah winning 31-28.
Yeah. So there's another game that I almost, Chris, went with the upset. Looking at the momentum you guys have, but I know that UCLA is the toughest defense they face, but
offense. I don't know
Utah
about defense, but
I'm sorry, the toughest offense they face. But Utah's defense is giving up less than 15 points a game. And they're really giving up less than 275 total yards, period, which to me is just outstanding. I think that UCLA is going to have a lot of success with a DTR and Charbonnet running. Actually, they'll have a better running game than most people expect. But I think they're going to have trouble when it comes to throwing the ball because DTR, you're saying DTR this year, DTR that year. This is also, would you agree, by far the best defense DTR is going to face?
Well, yeah, and it's the best defense in the Pac-12, right? I think that they're depending
Probably.
on what metrics you use, right? They're 26th in the country by the one that I look at. But that's the best in the Pac-12. I think there are a lot of good defenses in the Pac-12, but there are no absolutely great ones. And the thing about this Utah defense is I don't think it's as good as Utah defenses normally are. I don't think like the secondary has some dudes, again, especially Phillips, right? Like that kid's outstanding.
And Cole Bishop.
They have right. They have some issues at linebacker, I think, where I think they're going to have some issues covering us east to west, and their D line is good, but it's not Star Tualoe or like all these like dudes that they had. Like it's a very good defensive line. I'm not trying to like talk down on it at all, but it's not. This isn't like the stifling, crazy, great Utah defenses that we're used to over the last 5 years. It's a very good one, but it's not as scary as normal.
True, but again, I think it's leaps and bounds better than Washington, better than BYU, and like you said, there are some dudes in that secondary, which I think is going to force you guys to show your running game. And again, not having Devin Lloyd there, right? They had last year, who was obviously a huge difference maker. And I agree with you. They don't have that speed of getting out in the horizontal game that you're talking about. Where I think you guys will be able to pick up some. I think I can see DTR scrambling, down the sidelines, picking up that 3rd and 8, right? I see those things happening. I just really see that this defense is going to follow you guys up. I think that it's going to be a situation where they get out to a lead, and I think that you say is probably going to try to come back late in the game. But I just think that we haven't seen. Also, we felt Cam Rising for some reason hasn't been the same Cam Rising that I've seen in previous years. He's having a good season, but he's just not as commanding of the offense as he's been, and the offense has been inconsistent. But I just think that again, your secondary is very suspect.
It is, but what's interesting against like Washington, I think we did a way better job like disguising coverages than we did in
pass rush. Again, a good pass rush can mitigate a bad secondary, right?
Right. Like if Latu can find a way to get to the ball, I don't like. Yeah,
he's leading the Pac-12 in sacks, I believe.
That's what was so shocking against Washington, right? Is that Penix hadn't been sacked all year, and we're getting all over to him. Like in the second half, we kind of went prevent and turned it off. And I think there definitely are issues with our secondary, but I don't think it depends on whether Washington is real, like that result and what we look like there in the first half is something that we can reproduce, or if we happen to, kind of flash greatness and it doesn't stick around, right? Like the running joke on UCLA boards all the time is that we're Charlie Brown with Lucy holding the football, right? So like anytime we get excited, Lucy pulls the football away. So, hopefully Lucy doesn't pull the football away this weekend. But the secondary, like, again, we're not a team that's going to shut people out, and I don't think anyone thinks that, right? You just have to make enough big plays on defense to win games, but we're not going to, I don't think no one's under the impression that we're going to like hold them to 17 points or anything like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I really do mean this sincerely. I think that you say stays in the game, but I just think that Utah gets out to a lead and they just kind of carry that lead all the way through. And I honestly, I think they do it through the air, and they're gonna again, if Latu can get that pressure on Cam, I don't think you guys have the athletes on the defensive line to handle a mobile quarterback. I mean, we're talking about DTR running over other teams. It's gonna be interesting to see how well you guys can contain Cam Rising, because not only is he quick, but he's thick. You know what I mean? He takes on guys. He can break tackles, etc. So it'll be interesting. If I think your offense is where you want it to be, but I just don't think the defense is going to be able to hold down the Utes, and I think the Utes will be able to hold down your offense because they have a great secondary.
And we are even thinner on the offensive line than we were before. We had another kid, Tyler Manoa, is going to transfer out because I think he's used up like his 4 games that he can still redshirt before, and he's not getting the playing time that he was playing defensive line for us before, and then we had to move to the offensive line this year. But he's a backup, and so he's a backup, but on a like a very, very thin O-line. So hopefully our starters have been playing way better than I think most UCLA fans thought that they would. But we're even thinner than we are. So 1, I want to win, obviously, but 2, I want to get out healthy because there could be some offensive line problems. But what's really exciting to me, real quick, is that we've talked a lot this year about like, oh, we don't know that much about such and such team, but we're going to find out a lot real quick because UCLA plays Utah, and then in 2 weeks after that we play Oregon. USC, like Utah plays UCLA and then plays SC. Like there's a lot of big games coming up where we're going to learn a lot about these teams in the pecking order very, very quickly, and I think it's really exciting.
Well, since Chris took all my time up, I'm going to say 36-30.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
36-30 who, Tim?
Oh, no, I said Utah. I said Utah is going to just outpace them. Again, I think it's going to be where they're going to be up by like 2 scores a lot of the game. I think UCLA is at home is going to fight like hell. But I think Utah's the best team in the country. I think best team in the Pac-12. And I think UCLA is there. It's just I just think that they don't have. It'll be a tale of 2 secondaries. One that I think is superior, and one that's lacking. But again, what Chris said is valid. If Alatu is probably the best pass rusher in the Pac-12, can put pressure and contain Rising, that could cause problems for them.
All right, moving on to the next game. What I think is the game of the week. But first, we want to give you guys a plug for something that a lot of you guys may not have seen. We did something really incredible last night, and we had actually a Pac-12 special edition show that was our CEO chat. And LBC and I got to interview and chat with Dr. Elizabeth Chilton, Chancellor of Washington State. And she talked to us about what goes on in the Pac-12 meetings with their CEOs as they talk about realignment. She talked to us about how she works with the athletic director. She talked to us about how she went about hiring Jake Dickert as their coach. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. She's a really, really incredible lady. So I'm putting the link up there. It's a shortened link. I mean, you can just find it off Voice College Football YouTube channel, but that's a shortened link. It'll take you straight there. LBC, what did you think of Dr. Chilton yesterday?
I thought she's an amazing leader. I think she's going to do great things at Washington State. This is a woman that was living in upstate New York. I have to believe she was the dean at Binghamton University. And she was telling the story how when she was interviewing for this position, it was all during Zoom. She didn't even have a chance to visit Washington State because of COVID. And she got the job. She told her husband and her 21-year-old son, they packed up the car with the 2 dogs and they went off and they made their way to Pullman. And it was pretty cool. I think she said she was in the elevator and she had
in the airport.
In the airport, she had her Wazoo sweater on, and somebody said, "Hey, go Cougs!" And she said, "Yeah, go Cougs!" And said, "I'm the new chancellor." And they said, "Cool." So I thought that was pretty cool. I think she's definitely a trailblazer and is going to do great things at Washington State.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I mean, we talked a little bit also, guys. You should go watch it again. That's the link down there. You can just find it off Mark's channel. She's really blessed because Pat Shun is a phenomenal athletic director up there. He's one of the disciples of Gene Smith at Ohio State, and so he's really helping her do a lot of great things. But it was a really, really cool chat that we did in preparation for our next game. Now, this game, as I was reflecting on it, guys, I was also reflecting a little bit on the Aeneid this week. Because there's a line in the Aeneid, and some of you, I'll spare you the Latin. Some of you recognize perhaps "Fostereni resurgere Troiae," which actually, if we translate it, says, "Here are provided seats of meditative joy, where shall arise again the destined reign of Troy." Guys, it's been a surprisingly good season for the USC Trojans, perhaps better than, and certainly for those of you guys who have been following this show and this channel, better than any of us could have seen. So we've got quite a showdown here, guys. Are the Trojans back, and what's going to happen with Wazoo?
If there was ever a time I wanted to see Chris's camera, I wanted to see it during that quote.
I'll give you the play-by-play. I had my palm is on my eyebrows, and I'm looking down.
Just for you, Chris.
And I'm thinking to myself, when does USC play Utah so that this nonsense can stop? So I don't have to hear quotes from like the Iliad or something else from Homer. I took Latin in college, but
It's Virgil.
I don't need that anymore, right?
Here are provided seats of meditative joy, where shall arise again the destined reign of Troy. All right.
Yeah. So I'll talk for 5 seconds and then get out of the way since I filibustered about UCLA. But the interesting thing was how much USC was kind of playing with their food last week against Arizona State, and how much Arizona State kind of hung around. And I think, it hasn't come to bite them yet, but there's going to come a time, and I don't think it's this week, because if it was up at Washington State, in the Palouse, I think we'd have maybe a different story and maybe like a potential upset on our hands. Washington State defense is pretty good, but I think, you have too much firepower, and at the end of the day, you're better and you're going to win by like 10 points or something.
All right. On that note, hey, we just want to give a quick shout out. One Scoop John, awesome friend of the program. You guys can see he helps host the late night show on Sundays. Just pointed out Charles Blake, a big friend of the show, big viewer, big fan of the Voice of College Football, has talked about completing his sobriety program. And One Scoop John's giving him a shout out. But on behalf of all of us at the Pac-12 show, we want to give you a huge shout out as well, Charles. Congratulations. Truly. We're all here for you. So, and we're really glad to have you, safe and healthy and also watching the show. So thanks for joining us.
And we're looking forward to you, since you are on Patreon, getting in, I'm going to do a spoiler, but getting your vote in next week. I'll get on you even more this time. All right. Sorry, a quick break. Thank you, John, for bringing that. That's really important. And, we need to remember we're here talking about football, but we like to know about people's lives as well, because it's a family and a community here at the Voice of College Football. All right, LBC, what do you think about this big game, the Men of Troy?
You take a look at USC season so far, and each game has stepped up in class the first 4 games. In terms of, you had Rice, you go on the road to Stanford. Stanford was a better team than Rice. You had Fresno State with Jake Hayner, a quality team coming into the Coliseum, better than Stanford. And then you had Oregon State going on the road, Corvallis. Playing conference road games are not easy. I think Joel Klatt had a pretty good summarization of that on Twitter yesterday with respect to his opinion on Georgia going into Missouri and chasing Missouri in the lead for 56 minutes. They found out that, hey, Missouri is arguably the 13th best SEC team, and they had a struggle. USC had a struggle with Oregon State. Oregon State always gets up to play USC. It was an adios MFer game, as many of the fans were chanting similar chants and expletives. So it was a hostile environment, and they passed the test. And rightly so, they come home and play against ASU, and we know the dumpster fire that ASU is. And USC was not executing in the first half. They were sleepwalking. And credit to this staff and the players that they made second half adjustments. And that's one of the keys about USC this year, is that they're outscoring their opponents 55-7 in the third quarter. That's coaching, identifying what is going wrong, redirecting, re-game planning, focusing for the second half, and the players buying in and going and executing it. Last year, in comparison, the other coaching staff, the third quarter, scored 41 points and given up 42. So it was basically a wash because there was no second half adjustments. So USC, they executed a better second half. They did turn over the ball with an interception, but they got an interception. They're continuing to play a very opportunistic, aggressive defense. They lead the country in turnover margin. They're 5th in sacks. So those are very key to stopping drives, and that's going to be essential against Washington State. You have a quarterback in Cam Ward that is interception happy. He's thrown 7 interceptions. He's going to throw at least 2 more on Saturday at the Collie. This is an opportunity for USC to be on Fox TV, national TV, make a statement. Washington State is a very good squad. They're ranked number 26 right now. They are just outside the top 25. So how about that for a 6-pack for the Pac-12? 6 teams in the top 26. I'm just stating facts. I'm not playing on emotion or anything. I'm just borrowing a page from Mark Rogers and the Voice of College Football. So we're going to see USC with their offense hitting, and Cam Ward is going to have to try to keep up. I just don't see that happening. I see SC outscoring and outplaying Washington State over 4 quarters, and I've got the score of Trojans 38, Washington State 17.
All right. Hey, I want to give a shout out right now. David Knight, friend of the show. David, thank you so much for that contribution. That really helps with the Boys College Football program. We really appreciate it. You got, I think, a really good quote right here. Really good question. Guys, if somebody runs the table in the Pac-12, what do we think their chances are of making it to the CFP? I'm asking because I don't have an opinion on it. Well, David, actually, if you stick around for just a couple more minutes, we are going to have a whole preview of what we think about the potential CFP. And what we think about, and we actually did a poll of the entire Voice of College Football Patreon community. So guys, stick around for that in just a minute. And we're going to talk about kind of what we think things might be like. So it's actually going to be pretty cool. But just to answer your question right here, I think if somebody runs the table, I think there's no question they would actually get in. And I think that some of the other teams are not going to run the table. And I think that would pretty much cement it in. Just real quick, guys, 1 sec. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, are we all assuming what happens?
If one of the Pac-12 teams runs the table, you think they have a good shot at the CFP?
Oh, I definitely do. The big question becomes if it came down to the Big 12 undefeated champion and the undefeated Pac-12 champion, which way would it go? I'm thinking that it's going to be interesting, but I think on name recognition, and I'm just going to say it, I'm a USC fan, but I'm going to say USC gets in over OSU, the Cowboys, or an undefeated Big 12 team. That's my opinion.
And guys, again, I don't think our USC team might be perfect enough for that, but fingers crossed.
I'm just answering the question. I don't think we're going to defeat either, but I'm just answering the question.
All right. Anything? What else on USC Washington State? And guys, in a minute we're gonna put up the link and we're gonna want your thoughts on this.
Well,
but
let me get on this one. I'm sorry.
That's right. I've done this one yet. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm really interested to see this game. I think it's going to it's really going to tell me a lot about where our defense is, because again, I think the thing with Cam Ward is he showed the spotlight was too big for him in Eugene. Oh no, sorry, that wasn't Eugene. That was at home, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Pullman.
Huh? It was in Pullman, right? Yeah. So but the spotlight was way too big for him playing against that Oregon team. They had that game. They pick up a couple first downs. They win. And even on that second to last drive they had, where he throws that swing pass, it just seemed like the game hasn't slowed down for him yet. It doesn't seem like he goes through his progressions. I think we come away with some picks. I just do. I think that we're going to be a little too athletic, a little too fast for them. And I do see us getting to him as well. So I see USC winning this one. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I see USC winning this one big, 44-27.
Tim, I love your enthusiasm. I think it's going to be a little closer than that, but I agree with you. I think USC wins. One thing just to keep up, guys, and like I said, if you guys get a chance, definitely check out that interview with Dr. Chilton. You can see her there on the right. One thing I think that is really kind of neat about this game is that, it really sort of shows two programs that a year ago were in nightmares, absolute nightmares a year ago for both of these programs. And you had great CEOs, great athletic directors, and they both brought in two new great coaches that have both of these teams on an absolute upswing. And I think it's really a testament to what happens when your administration and your leadership at a senior level aligns. We talk a lot about, what does it take to succeed in these teams that are, doing terrible. It starts at the CEO level, it goes down to the athletic director, and then to the right football coach. And go Cougs, because I hope you guys have a great season, but certainly fight on Trojans. I think USC wins and covers, but I think it may be a little closer. We're going to sweat a little bit. We'll see. All right. So moving on, guys, something we did that's actually pretty exciting here that we're pretty excited about is we got together Mark's entire Patreon community and we put it out to them. We've created the new Voice of College Football 12P5 rank. So the 12P5 is our 12-pack Patreon playoff prediction poll. So we put it out to Mark's entire Patreon community. And if you guys aren't a part of the Voice of College Football Patreon community, it's $5 a month on Patreon. It's really fun. There's all sorts of really, really neat opportunities there that people interact. They do live stream chats. They do all kinds of special stuff. It's really, really fun. And real quick, Jason Osborne, yeah, you'll absolutely get a kick out of it. It was a really great interview. So we got our 12-pack Patreon prediction poll, our 12P5. We put it out to Mark's community, to folks from the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and even independent and G5 teams. And we put everybody's predictions together to see what we think today, looking forward, what would a 12-team playoff actually look like? And we have the results being announced live right now. Are you guys ready? So if we put together the structure just like it is with everybody from the Voice of College Football community's rankings, and we've got number 1 in the All-State Sugar Bowl in the semifinals, Alabama. Number 2, probably in the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State. Number 3, but seeded number 5 are the Georgia Bulldogs. Because remember, in our new playoff structure, the byes only go to the 4 highest ranked conference champions. And Mark's Voice of College Football Patreon community thought that Alabama was going to win the SEC. So Georgia bumps down to number 5. We see the same thing out of the Big Ten, where folks thought Michigan would finish 4th. So that moves them down to number 6. Next up to bat, Clemson, the ACC champion, finishing 5th, but getting that number 3 seed. And I love this, guys. Number 4, the little old lady from Pasadena, fight on Trojans. The Patreon community voted USC as the number 4 seed, finishing 6th overall. Then we get the Big 12 with projected Big 12 champion. Most people predicted Oklahoma State. They would host a game in Stillwater. And the University of Tennessee, the Vols, Rocky Top, hosting a game in Knoxville. So should we see who the community voted on next? First of all, before we get to that, what do you guys think of the rankings so far?
It was great to see that although there was a lot of differences within the individual voters, like we had a lot of people like Clemson a lot higher, maybe some Ohio State lower, USC a little bit lower. It all shook out really to not mirror, but very close to what the AP has right now. So that was kind of interesting.
It really did. I was impressed by that. All right. We guys ready to see who these first round games are?
Yeah, let's do it.
See it.
All right. First round games. Tennessee is playing Utah, because what does Utah want more than to go into another SEC stadium at night? What do you guys think about this bracket? We got Tennessee and Utah are going to play each other in Knoxville, and then the winner play Alabama. What do you guys think of that bracket? What do you think might happen?
I just think that Tennessee might have too many athletes for the Utes, and so I would tip that one to Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't see the Utes going into Knoxville this year and beating that team.
Again,
they don't have that interior defensive line. If they had one of those normal, right, like they had those nasty NFL type defensive lines, interior linemen, then I might change my vote. But as is of right now, the roster right now, I go Tennessee.
500 team on the road in their last 23, and they'd lose to Tennessee in that one. Like they're gonna lose to the Bruins.
Yeah.
Pac-12 guys, close your eyes for this unveiling.
All right. I like I like that point. All right, next up to bat, we've got coming in live from you know what? Hold on, we're bringing in Tide Guy to join us here because he was one of our voters. Tide Guy, your Alabama Tide but you're probably getting a second shot at Tennessee. Is that mean or is it just for fun?
Hey, anytime Alabama can beat Tennessee twice in 1 year, that's a great year.
Sweet home Alabama. All right, guys. Next on the list, we would see Penn State heading to Stillwater. And then the winner is probably heading to Dallas to play Ohio State. What would you guys think about that matchup?
That's phenomenal. I love that. Love to see Penn State against Oklahoma State and Stillwater. Big 10, Big 12.
I don't really have a favorite on that one. I think it's almost a coin toss game.
I think that would be an awesome game. You know it's going to be a whiteout game. Oh, no, it's at Ohio State. Oklahoma State. But
they'll be banging those paddles together like crazy.
But think of what Penn State did to Auburn going into Auburn this year. And I know Auburn's down, but I mean, they have one on the road in a tough environment and won. So I think that'd be a great game.
I think that's disrespecting the Pokes. Come on. The Pokes this year versus Auburn, please.
And guys, we put the link, by the way, the link's in the chat. We'd love to have you guys chime in and tell us about your thoughts on here. Chiming in. All right, next up to bat. Moving on, we've got, what do we think we're going to see in Ann Arbor? We've got the Oregon Ducks that the voters predicted. The voters think that the Oregon Ducks would finish 11, and that would send them to Ann Arbor to play Michigan. Bo Nix versus JJ. What do we think?
I'll give you the Oregon answer right here. I'm just guessing. Well, we went into Ohio State last year and beat them. We'll go into the Big House and beat Michigan.
Where's One Scoop John? I think we need some One Scoop John opinion on this.
Yeah, the Pac-12 will be 0-2 after this game, and I think that the defense, Oregon's I like Oregon, Oklahoma, Oregon's offense, but I just don't see this is be too much for them. Again, it's a matter of just not building the lines. And I know that they have a veteran big offensive line, and I know that Oregon has talked about how great their front seven is, but I haven't seen that great front seven this year. And their secondary, again, like I talked about, 119th in the country in pass defense. That's going to be trouble. So again, this one, unfortunately, Pac-12 is going to Michigan.
No, the Ducks shock the world and shock everyone that hasn't watched them since their game against Georgia, and they come in to Ann Arbor as a brand new team and take down the Wolverines.
All right, guys. I think I'm on Team DeReal MVP on this one. DeReal, you and I are in lockstep on this. He says I think Michigan would beat Oregon and Clemson. I think you're right, DeReal. I think we get a semifinal rematch of Michigan and Ohio State. And how fun would that be in the Fiesta Bowl?
Hey, Tony, any guesstimate of when these first round games at the higher seed home stadiums would occur? Would that be like early December?
It would probably be early December, early to mid, probably like December, like 10th or 15th or something. Yeah, the Big House is going to be cold.
That'd be an interesting matchup to see Oregon traveling to Ann Arbor in early December. I think Nike better get started on some uniforms with fur or feathers, some type of special material to protect their ducks in the cold.
Exactly. I think you're right. I'm sure guys, Nike can design something, though. Sorry, what were you saying, Tide Guy?
Can I ask you guys a question? I did a video today, and I brought up this question, and nobody has addressed this question.
And hold on, before you ask it, because you always have great questions, if you guys aren't following Tide Guy's channel, Jeff is absolutely awesome, and he has a really brilliant channel. It's not about Alabama. It's about all college football, and you guys should all definitely check it out and follow it.
Okay, Tony. You said that these games would probably be either the second weekend or third weekend in December, because the first weekend's your championship week.
Yeah, Mark, actually, we just got the word. Mark says they would probably be on December 17th.
Okay, now here's the problem with this, and nobody's addressed it. We have an early signing period for college recruits during that time. So you're going to have these coaches worrying about getting their players ready for playoffs and having to take the focus off of that to worry about recruits coming in. How stressful is that going to be?
I'm wondering, Jeff, because there's been a lot of people, well, definitely fans, so they don't care about us, but I wonder if they move or get rid of that altogether.
Yeah.
Because it's already messing up how the coaching searches have to go. I mean, that's why people are getting fired in 2 games, 3 games into their season, because you need to get a staff in place in order to start recruiting for the early signing period, which were all the top athletes. You know what I mean? It's just made a mess of the whole thing, to be honest with you. And I wonder, given this kind of a timetable, giving what the coaches are, because you're right, the coaches can't. There's no opportunity for them to do that during the middle of a playoff, first round of the playoffs. You guys are doing recruiting and you're closing your recruiting class. I honestly think that they're going to move that or just get rid of it and move back to February, which I'm all in favor of.
Jeff, that's a great question, and the answer is unknown at this point. But what you had back in early September when the board of managers, the presidents and chancellors, the 11 of them, basically said to college football and to the commissioners, we're going to have a 12-team playoff. And as in 2026 or possibly in 2024, conference commissioners go figure it out. This is one of the things they're going to have to figure out, exactly what you just brought up. They're going to have to work out the logistics. How is that going to look? When are these games going to be played? How does that interfere with the early signing day period? Transfer portal issues. I think you're going to see the signing day go back to February. That's where it's going to happen.
Wait, can I tell everybody real quick about my favorite LBC moment from the Dr. Chilton interview about this?
Oh, go ahead.
Amazing moment. LBC starts asking Washington State president, who is sort of above the whole system, Kirk Schultz, is on the college football playoff board of managers. He's one of the 11 university presidents on that committee. And so LBC starting to grill Dr. Chilton about the playoff thing, and her eyes start to get really big because it's clearly a question she doesn't want to answer. And then LBC just finally says, so when they ordered the commissioners to do this, was it just the parents smacking the kids around? And she got a big grin. She definitely wanted to say yes, but quite couldn't. So Dr. Chilton, we love it. And then we both thanked her for that, for the fact that Washington State helped lead the folks there. Hey, other voter, because one of our voters, so we wanted to make sure he was in there. D4 Sports, a Big 12 representative extraordinaire. What do you think of the rankings here so far in this Voice of College Football 12P5 ranking playoff?
Oh, man, I think they're absolutely great matchups there. Some dream matchups that everybody would want to see.
All right, do you want to see the last one, D4?
Yeah.
All right, bracket 5 in Athens, Georgia would be the Cincinnati Bearcats from the American. Now, remember, Cincinnati finished much lower in everyone's projected rankings, but the top 6 conference champions would be there. So Cincinnati jumps up everybody. I think Ole Miss was the bubble team being left out. So Ole Miss is the team that gets booted for Cincinnati. Cincinnati goes into Athens, and then the winner heads to Pasadena. What do you guys think about this 4th bracket?
This is a tough one. I mean, it depends on what system. No, what are we talking about? This is over. This is over before they kick off, right? This is Georgia all the way.
Or does Georgia even come? Do we just say Georgia? We'll see you in Atlanta.
Let's just be an additional bye game.
Or do I remind you guys the last time that Cincinnati played Georgia, which was not long ago, it was a close game.
And Tony, you made a really astute point when you said that the 5 position, we might as well just call it the SEC runner-up position, right? With the 5 spot, just the way things usually have been going. And if the Big 12 or the Pac-12 are going to get teams in, they're going to every year the Pac-12 or the Big 12 is most likely playing a very angry SEC team. So it's kind of a weird bracket, a weird corner, but that was a good point you made up.
You do. You get a very angry SEC team. Darreel's asking, Ole Miss and no Kentucky. Darreel, Ole Miss was the first bubble team out. Kentucky was significantly down further. I don't think that the voters in the poll had a lot of faith for your Wildcats to survive much the rest of the season, but we'll see. If they do, if Kentucky can beat Georgia, we'll see what we're gonna see. Mikey G wants to know, guys, this is personal pain. Mikey G's asking us what's gonna happen with that Georgia USC game. Is it gonna be as ugly as we think?
78-0.
Let me time him out, clock him out.
USC won't score 78 points, so no, it won't be that big of a win. USC so Georgia, we decided in this scenario there are no unfortunately Pac-12 fans. We will still have no.
There'll be no playoff wins for the Pac-12 in this scenario. None.
Except for the Ducks, who got one against Florida State a long time ago. We still don't get another Pac-12 win under this scenario. But no.
Yeah, Georgia's heads and shoulders above USC. That's at least a 3-touchdown game, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, who should certainly join us for this, has made his score prediction: UGA 41, USC 28. I think that's probably pretty close.
You're being too kind, Mark. You're being too kind.
Mark, you're getting some. Oh, we got Will ND. Hey, Will ND, call in the show. Tell us about Notre Dame, who's sort of like honorary Pac-12. You play so many Pac-12 teams. You got a game in Vegas this weekend. So give us a buzz and let us know what you think of that.
Yeah, Will was one of the voters.
So guys, we had a question earlier about our prediction sort of on the playoffs here. This model here would show us as we predicted. Guys kind of said Alabama, Georgia, and then Ohio State versus a potential Michigan or Clemson. Sort of what do we think about the actual playoffs, which is just the 4 teams this year, and any surprises?
I think the one thing that the committee would do is tweak this. I think they would move 4 and 3. I think they would put Clemson they would move 5 and 6 because they wouldn't want a rematch in the semifinal of, possibly the ACC championship and the Big Ten championship, before they play. I think they would kind of separate them to try to get those games not played.
Wait, you mean they would fudge the numbers in order to make a better matchup for the televisions? I don't believe it.
I know it sounds crazy, but I just think they might be crazy enough to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's why I don't like committees. It's too easy to rig a committee between a bunch of backdoor deals and television executives.
Yeah.
But think about this, Tim. If you change number 5 and you change number 6, let's move Georgia over to play and Michigan over, and then you have Michigan and Cincinnati playing, and then USC has to play Michigan. Then what's your outcome? You see what I'm saying?
On that one, you got another rematch of Georgia, Oregon. So I don't know if they want to see that either.
Yeah.
I've seen that story once. It still gives a.
We talked about this last night, actually, in the Patreon chat. Oregon got the doors blown off them in that first game, right? But we have to remember, you're talking about the national champions. You're talking about a coaching staff that's been together. You're talking about guys that 4th, 5th year seniors that are in that program. They roll out. It's a de facto home game, and then you have Oregon traveling from Oregon all the way across the country. New coordinators, new head coach's very first head coaching game. A new quarterback. Everything's brand new. Does anyone here think that Oregon wins? No, I don't. But do you think Oregon loses like that? I definitely do not think that they lose that bad.
All right, guys, we've got some folks backing up to join in the chat.
Yeah, I'll drop out.
All right, D4. Hey, great to see you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Very first quick, Gixxer Squid, who is one of our best USC gurus. Who was actually supposed to join us a little bit ago. Gixxer, tell us, what do you think about the USC Washington game?
I'm thinking I think you mentioned this earlier. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than we are all expecting. I think Washington's going to move the ball. Washington State's going to move the ball between the 20s and probably struggle in the red zone. That's just my guess. I think it's going to look like they're moving the ball, but they're going to perhaps struggle to score. I'm thinking more of a I don't know, kind of a 31-17 game. Yeah, I just think it's going to be closer. Real quick, going back to the playoff bracket, not to get off your question, I'm struggling to understand how Oregon and USC could both be there because I feel like it's an either or.
Well, a scenario you could have is that first off, they don't meet during the regular season.
True.
And
it would depend. It would depend on what happens in the championship game. Of course, remember, guys, this is all hypothetical. So this is the voters. Mark's Patreon community voted based on their projected rankings, and then we average them together, kind of like the AP poll or the college football playoff poll. So you have to take it with a grain of salt because those games haven't happened yet.
It's a blind top 25 right now, so it's not like we filled the bracket out together. It was more of a situation where Rick came up with this great idea, and then we all decided that we're all going to just do 1 through 25, all the guys in the Patreon, and then they put it in through an Excel spreadsheet, and then just popped it and tabulate everything, and then we, I guess, placed it into proper spots for the brackets. So you're right. I mean, it is a bit awkward there. Obviously, it can be done, but you're gonna have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to figure out how they're both going to get there. But it's not improbable, like a 5 or 6 USC and an 11, and it turned out to be 11th ranked Oregon. So they just got to finish in the top 12 or 11. They're going to be in.
This is actually a snapshot through the first 6 weeks of the college football season, through games played through obviously October 1st. And so I understand your question. We decided to go ahead and roll this out now. And
we're going to update it each week.
Yeah, it'll be updated each week. So things are going to change. Just think about
the folks who are in the Patreon community who have not contributed yet, not joined the thing yet. We'd love to have your picks. There's a easy spreadsheet. We'd love your votes.
Because if you compare it to
although if you try to game it, we will delete it. Yeah, so don't do that.
If you think about the college football playoff bracket, it's going to come out, I believe, the 3rd week of October. The first one creates discussion. I believe there's 7 or 8 versions that come out until the final one's released. So they look completely different. And we're rolling this out like 3 weeks before their first one comes out. And so we're creating discussion here. It's going to change. But the great thing about somebody's microphone's kind of going crazy. But what the great thing about it is that we've tapped into the Patreon community, and as Tony mentioned, you've got representatives from all conferences and independents and G5. So it's a pretty good aggregate, ranking. And again, it's going to change week to week. So performance on the field is going to dictate where teams are going to shake out moving forward.
That makes sense. I will say, who would have thought any bracket at this stage of the season would not have Notre Dame? I'm just looking at that, and as a USC fan,
on that note, there's only one person who can answer this question. Will Gixer has questioned the Irish. What do we think?
Well, I mean, we all know why. It's because we lost to Marshall.
Where's D4? We need him to chime in on that.
I just wanted to hear someone say it. Thank you.
I mean,
I love Gixer Squid.
Gixer, I mean, I root for USC, so it looks better if we beat you guys, and you guys should root for us too until we play. I mean, that's my rationale for USC.
No, it'll be a good game. I'm just kind of sad because my family that's coming into town, we were expecting 2 top-ranked teams, and I just feel kind of bad because I think I oversold it. But it'll be a good game, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be a good game. I think we can be a top 15 team, even if we lose to Clemson.
Hey, Will.
If we win the rest.
Remember, you're a Notre Dame fan. It's when you beat USC, not if.
Oh. Okay, wait. Can someone time him out? He's gone.
Sorry,
gone. Gone. You're out of here. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Will. Speaking of which, Will, real quick, because it's not a Pac-12 game, but Notre Dame affects the Pac-12. Will, give us your quick take. Notre Dame goes to Vegas this weekend to take on Brigham Young. What do you think?
Oh, I think we should be able to run the ball at will. With how shaky BYU's lines looked, I feel like we can definitely expose them, and hopefully Chris Tyree can have some runs to the house, and Logan Diggs will get some good touches too, as he did against UNC. And then in the late third and fourth quarter, Audric Estime can just kill him with his we call him the mini bus now, Audric Estime. As he can just crush through the D lineman and get those first downs with third and short.
What's your score prediction, Will?
I'm going 31-14.
All right. I like it. I think that's a safe pick.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody on here think the Irish are in trouble, or are we universally is the show universally expecting an Irish win?
Irish win, but I think it might be a little bit closer than he thinks.
Do we think Baylor is not good anymore, or
I got Notre Dame by a field goal.
I don't think Baylor's as good as they're hyped to be, Chris.
I think that BYU is a little bit better than you guys might be giving them credit for. I don't know who wins that game, to be honest, but I think that shellacking that they took up in Eugene made a lot of people sour on BYU all of a sudden.
They also didn't look good against Utah State.
I
have to admit that I did not watch that game at all.
I did, and I was not impressed.
They looked. I mean, granted, Mikey G's going to kill me, but the running back for Oregon, what's his name again? The transfer. Nobody. Little guy, the speedster. Anyway, he made those.
Travis Dye.
Huh?
Travis Dye.
No, on Oregon right now.
I know. I'm just being silly.
They made that BYU team looked so slow that I think Tyree's gonna be the same kind of model that we saw. It's killing me. I forgot his name. Come on, where are you, Mikey G? Irving. Thank you. Irving is like a Tyree kind of jitterbug, like a fast speedster. I think there are a lot of and man, it looked like those the front seven and even the safeties for BYU. It looked like they were running in quicksand. So I think if you guys follow that model and that Tyree uses speed, I think you guys, are in for it. Both you guys have big veteran offensive lines. I think there's a lot of similarities, and I think you guys just run all over them.
All right. So now, all right, real quick, moving on. Hey, I want to keep all you guys in here for just 1 sec because we're going to bring our number one show guest, our star every week of our show, questioner extraordinaire. And I want all you guys to be able to chime in on his answers. Guys, we've got Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports. Jeffrey has a great channel. Again, another one that if you guys get a chance is absolutely worth following for everybody. And every week, Jeffrey joins us. He's usually our number one guest and has some good questions about the Pac-12 for everybody to chat about. Jeffrey, welcome to the Pac-12 Live Chat Show.
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. Thanks. I was going to bring up about how last week we were talking about, I brought up who you thought would be maybe the next coach fired if it wasn't Carl Durrell, and everybody said Brian Harsin. How about Paul Chryst? Can you believe that? I mean, that to me came out of nowhere. I know they started out the season 2 and 3, but I never expected him to be the next coach fired after, with Carl Durrell at the same time. That's just insane. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was shocking, right? They have to be doing it to make sure that they keep that coordinator they have. That's the only way that any of this makes sense is that they're that guy's turned down, jobs from the NFL reportedly and a few other places. People think he's elite, and it's a thing where they're so afraid that they're going to lose him that they're just making the move now.
Are you saying like a Lincoln Riley Stoops situation?
Yeah, no, similar.
And then the thing is they're about to go on a run, right? If you look at their schedule, Wisconsin, it's the road gets a little bit easier going forward. So if you're going to get rid of them, you get rid of them now. Sorry, Jeffrey. I know it may be painful to hear, but it gets a little bit easier. The schedule gets a little bit easier coming up, and he may go on a little bit of a run. It's hard to fire a coach when he's on a run. You know what I mean? Similar thing happened to. That's when they got rid of Kiffin. Kiffin got blown out in ASU, but he was gonna play some easy teams coming up, and they gave it to O, and O went on a run. I think it's again kind of a similar situation. You don't want to let your coach that you're going to get rid of go on a run, because that's what.
And I don't think it makes any sense unless they think Leonard's the guy and they want to bring him in right now and prop him up and have him do well on that stretch that you're thinking of. Because I don't know, Wisconsin doesn't seem like the place to fire a guy for doing what Chris has done so far.
Well, and real quick, what do you guys think? Taking it back to the Pac-12 here, Clint brings a real question. Would Paul Chryst be a good candidate for ASU or Colorado?
I don't think he wants to go to Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think either one of them would work right now. But the thing with Wisconsin, though, firing Paul, does that hurt Wisconsin? Because think about it. He was 72% winning. He led them to 3 Big Ten championships out of 7. He, is a great coach, was doing really great. Yeah, he's having a bad year this year to start. And that's the same thing that Nebraska did to Bo Pelini. And look what happened to Nebraska once Pelini left. They just went down.
And Gus Malzahn at Auburn.
Yeah, as a coach, do you want to go into Wisconsin going, hey, they just fired a coach who won 72% of his games, went to 3 out of 7 Big Ten championships, and they fired the guy? I mean, that to me is
I think you're right.
A coach. And
all right, Jeffrey,
Wisconsin is not a top tier team. I'm sorry to inform anybody of that who thinks they are, but they're not a big brand team. They're kind of a second tier team.
The thing is they already have their head coach. That's the idea.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. All right, moving on from Wisconsin, back to the Pac-12. Jeffrey, what's next on your list?
I got before I want to get real quick right before I get to the playoff, but one more thing. I got something for you, Chris. Do you think that if South Alabama beats UCLA, do you think that affects them from beating Washington a couple weeks later as they did last week? Because in my opinion, I think that South Alabama game saved UCLA because of the fact they got the win. Because you look at Penn State when they lost to Indiana in 2020 and they fell apart, they got the win. And when you barely win, it wakes you up to beat a big team like Washington.
I don't know if it's saved us, so to speak. Our non-conferences have records have especially early in the Chip Kelly tenure have been not very good, and including losses to teams that we, arguably would be surprised or should, thought that we should beat. And I don't think that's ever changed the team's demeanor going forward. And just a quick note on that South Alabama team that everyone loves to trash us for barely squeaking by, right?
They're pretty good.
They're 4-1, and they're probably gonna they're just as likely as anyone else to win their division in the Sun Belt and be in the Sun Belt championship game. I'm not saying that they're going to do it, but they're not chopped liver.
No, and I mean, in all honesty, we just talked about the the new playoff bracket. It's not inconceivable South Alabama ends up finishing higher than Cincinnati. I kind of think Cincinnati's a little bit overrated. No offense to the Bearcats.
Hey, I know all about South Alabama, too, because their head coach is Kane Womack, who was the defensive coordinator in Indiana. So I know they're good. I'm just saying that, to me, them escaping them helped UCLA do even better in the future because it woke them up. I really believe in that. When you escape like that, that really helps you do better in the future. Than when
escaping certainly more pleasant than not escaping.
And
I know that well. I talked
to Chris about this. I mean, and you guys that follow SRS, which is the simplified rating system, and basically it tells you how good 0 means you're an average team. If you want to look at teams like Georgia are an 18, and a typical team is 0. That South Alabama team is 9. So they are a solid program. They're doing things right. So that all the numbers are looking like they're a solid team. And like you said, they're 4-1. And they're a good chance to win the Sun Belt.
By the way, Jeffrey, you're getting a shout out. And like I said, you guys, you should check out Jeffrey's channel because he may be an Indiana fan from North Carolina, but he covers all college football on his channel, and it's definitely worth a follow.
Thank you a lot. I was going to point out too, again, right before I want to get to the playoff real quick before I hop off, but that Ralph wrote in the comment section about Indiana, Tom Allen getting fired. I don't know about that. I mean, I talked to Mark Rogers before the season, said if Indiana had like a 4-8 season, would Tom Allen get fired? And he told me no, because Indiana has low expectations in football, which I know. But as we're seeing now, especially with this new age of football, you never know. Everybody, I mean, 5 Power 5 coaches have already been fired, so you never know. I mean, Indiana is trending in the wrong direction, so you could be right on Tom Allen. But going to your playoff thing, your playoff bracket, man, this is interesting because you got 3 Pac-12 teams in the playoff if this occurred. And even though I still think that the 12-team playoff, even though Mark Rogers said that he wanted to swing me to the 12-team playoff, which I don't dislike it all the way, I just know that it's going to put more injuries and stress on the players, because I do think about the players, even though now they're making a lot of money. But I still think that it's not wise to do it. And it's all being done because of money. But I think having 3 teams from the Pac-12 in the playoff actually does show that the Pac-12 is improved this year. I agree with that 100%. And I can't stand reading across message boards that the Pac-12 is still the worst conference. And it's like, okay, they were the last 5 years, but this year they're maybe the 3rd best, or even maybe the 2nd best, as the Big Ten's been struggling. The Pac-12 is a lot better.
And you're right, Jeffrey. There's some statistics I was just reading that talked about, Pac-12's overall quality this year being the highest it's been since 2016. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that, just like you mentioned, last year the Pac-12's ranking was the lowest it's been since 1946. So, which isn't even the Pac-12. That was the Pacific Coast Conference, and it involved Idaho and Montana, who were conference members at the time. So, last year was historically the worst year in the history of the Pac-12 as far as team performance. So, I think you're right. And we talked on the show a little bit about, it's not that they're especially good this year, it's that they're back to normal. And that's just it, what you just said. And to go back to normal, there's a lot of recency bias in all this. Going back to normal only means going back to 2016. That's not a long time ago. 2016 was not that long ago. And you had a very solid, Oregon team. You had a very, not Oregon, sorry, my bad. You had a very solid Washington team and USC team in that year that could have, towards the end of the year, could have played with a lot of teams. So, the recency bias that our conference is just below everybody else is a bit absurd. And I'll tell you another thing, guys. It's actually kind of interesting here, kind of on this same note, is that in the past 2 years, so we think about the last 2 years have really been like probably the worst 2 years in Pac-12 recent history. But we talked a lot earlier about like CEO alignment and all that. In the past 7 years, most of the Pac-12 CEOs have been replaced. So the folks that put Larry Scott in place to run the conference, with 2 exceptions, all gone. But what's especially interesting is about 2 years ago, the Pac-12 had a bit of a come to Jesus moment and realized that football needed to be a priority for the leadership. And since then, in 2 years, just 2 years, 7 of the 12 Pac-12 coaches gone, including a lot of the flagship coaches. And there are only 2 coaches that have been around since before like 2015 or so. And it's Kyle Whittingham from Utah's been there forever, and David Shaw from Stanford, who's kind of hot seat right now, has been there since Harbaugh. Other than that, we are talking about new coaches rebuilding most of these programs. And I think it's pretty impressive, because we're realizing that they're starting to take it all seriously again. Anyway, sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I think that this bracket's really interesting because of the fact you got all these teams on here, and we got to get you to vote in it next week. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I say, it's in the Patreon or whatever. I still got
Jeffrey. I will pay for your first month of Patreon.
All right, Jeffrey, send me a DM. We'll send you the thing. You're part of the family.
But
I just hear Will is going to pay for a Notre Dame vote. Is that what he's doing?
No.
Notre Dame's buying votes. Is that what's happening?
He's Indiana fan. Doesn't mean he votes for the teams in Indiana. Will, okay.
But I think that that Oregon Michigan game. I don't know how good Michigan is. I mean, obviously they're about to play Indiana this week, but Michigan's been pretty good this season. But I don't think it's impossible to say that Oregon in this bracket couldn't beat Michigan. I mean, it's not impossible. And Utah, Tennessee, I mean, I don't know. That one could go either way, too. I just think that the spreads are ridiculous. It's like when you watch Alabama and every team that they play, they're favored by like 25. And then they end up winning by like 7. I mean, sometimes the spreads are inflated, and the Pac-12 bias is or unbiased or whatever you want to call it is ridiculous because it's better this year. It's like, again, people only remember what they last see. Well, what you're seeing now is an improved conference, and people are going to like write off all these games and say, oh, they can't win. And I think they can beat some of these teams on here. I mean, I don't know, USC and Georgia's playing the way they are right now. USC could definitely beat Georgia in this bracket, and Oregon could beat Michigan on a bad day if Michigan's playing poor. And I think Utah could beat Tennessee if, again, they have a good day. It's not impossible. So I'm not kind of rambling again, but again, I'm just saying that looking at this, I think that the Pac-12 has a chance to win some games once the 12-team playoff exists if they continue to be a better conference like they are this season.
I think you bring up.
I think you're right.
You bring up some great points, Jeffrey, with recency bias. And I'll just point this out. You know, Tony mentioned it. There's a lot of new coaches that have been hired in the Pac-12, and they've been turning programs around. Case in point, Washington. Look at that. Let's compare that to the SEC. Tennessee has been a dumpster fire for like 15 years, but they hired Josh Heupel. Look where they're at right now. He's turned that program around. They got Lane Kiffin. Look at Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I mean, he's put on makeup and lipstick, and Ole Miss is looking like she's 25. I mean, Ole Miss looks this good since 1960. Okay, you got Mike Leach coming from Washington State, injecting some offense, actually playing some defense. Mississippi State is relevant. Okay, you got Sam Pittman turning around Arkansas. So there's examples of what good coaches can do. And recency bias, if you use, you know, your bias from 3 years ago with those programs, they would still be those lousy programs. It's not true. So if it can happen there, why can't it happen in the Pac-12? That's all we're saying, you know?
I like it. All right, Jeffrey, what else?
I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, when you're talking about what you just said about coaches turning programs around, I agree with that because I hear all the time talking to people I know and just reading online and stuff, and people like, oh, this program will never be good again. It's like even Nebraska, I roasted them the other night on Thursday last week. But again, to say Nebraska can never be good again is downright ridiculous. It just takes the right coach, and I agree. And to say that a coach getting fired is because he's a terrible coach. I mean, you look at Carl Durrell when he was at UCLA in the mid-2000s. I mean, yeah, he got fired, but he was decent. At Colorado, it's like you said, they're run poorly. They're not getting any good players to want to come there. At least when they were in the Big 12, they were getting the Texas recruits because, like Nebraska was as well, because not everybody can go to Texas, so they went to Colorado and Nebraska. Colorado's not getting any players. That's not Carl Durrell's fault, just like it's not Jeff Collins' fault at Georgia Tech. He has no players. Jameer Gibbs transferred to Alabama. How do you expect Jeff Collins to win anything with just Jeff Sims at quarterback? They have no good players. Their best player got kicked out for targeting against Clemson, and they completely fell apart and lost that game. I don't think in a lot of instances that it's the coach's fault when they get fired in a lot of instances because the team's not good enough to win. I mean, Nick Saban can't save Colorado right now. They gotta get improvements, like you said, from the administration. I mean, they're just a complete dumpster fire because of themselves. It's not the coach's fault. I mean, to me, like I said, you know, when you have a top 10 talent roster, kind of like USC or Texas, and Tom Herman gets fired, and Charlie Strong gets fired at Texas, and Clay Helton gets fired at USC, it's understandable because of the fact that they should be doing better with what they have. But at some of these schools where the talent's poor and they're losing, it's understandable for them to get fired. I mean, even Tom Allen, I can kind of complain a hair because Indiana is a little bit better than what they play against Nebraska. Their talent's not great. But I can at least say he probably should have done better than he has, I guess, in the last couple of seasons, even though there's been a lot of injuries. But coaches get way too much blame when things are going wrong, and they get way too much praise sometimes when things are going good, because when things are going good, it's the players, and when things are going bad, it's the players a lot of the time, and a lot of times it's the administration's run really good or poorly. But the coaches get way too much of the blame or praise either way.
All right. Hey, guys, everybody should seriously follow Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports. He does a great job with his channel, and we're glad to have you. Thanks for swinging by, Jeffrey.
Thank you. I like the graphic, and I can't wait to come on next week. And again, and go Trojans and go everybody Pac-12, because I want anybody that stinks to win. That's why I go for Indiana.
I like it. Hey, and shoot me a DM. We'll get your vote in this next week.
Okay, sounds good. I'll try to do that. Thank you.
All right, talk to you soon.
All
right, hey,
look at this one really quickly, Tony. I want to look at this one right here. Mark's calling out the fact that Ole Miss has a better resume than Utah right off the bat. I'm not sure that's as black and white as is stated there, because let's take a look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss beat Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech. Is there a pulse in
those are some terrible football teams.
Those are 3 bottom feeders.
Utah humiliated BYU, and they whipped Oregon State, who's a pretty good team. I mean, I agree with you, but then again, I've learned. But if Mark knows where his bread's buttered with the SEC fans.
I got you.
Just kidding, Mark. Just kidding. We're teasing. We love you. We love you.
So then they scraped one out. A tough battle against Tulsa. They won by a touchdown.
Cincinnati beat them by more.
And then they beat
Kentucky. They did. Cincinnati did beat them by more.
And they beat Kentucky by 3 points.
And I'm a Jackson Dart and I'm a Lane Kiffin fan here.
And the fact I think you're right. And the fact is they did finish right behind Utah. So it wasn't like they were right there. They were the bubble team. But I mean,
they were the next one.
I wouldn't go as far to say is like it's just cut and dry. Like, oh, they got a better resume, because they haven't played. The best team they played was Kentucky, who has a good team. But again, it's early. We don't know
team. The voters did not think it was a terribly good team as of this week.
So,
I mean, what if Ole Miss went on the road in week 1 at Utah? Like Utah had to go on at Florida. It's like probably Ole Miss doesn't beat Utah at Utah in week 1.
No, I don't think they do at all. I don't think they beat them anywhere, to be honest.
I can't.
But like I said, I'm a big Jackson Dart fan. Jackson Dart got smoked by Utah. Let's be clear on how Jackson Dart did against Utah. All right, moving on. I agree with you guys. The voters in the poll did not think very highly of Kentucky, and they were SEC voters. So, who knows? Yeah, like I said, I'm a big.
Mark's doubling down.
Mark's doubling down. We got the boss here. The boss is here, guys. Mark, make the case for Ole Miss.
It's not close.
Do I have to be the fact checker on this show? Do
I we'll get control Mark to get on the show. I knew I could get him in.
You trolled him in.
I was having a nice, quiet night.
Tim did the whole reeling of the boss in. I like it.
Tim knows how to push my buttons, I guess. All of you do, I guess.
Okay. He does. It was brilliant.
Okay, Utah has beaten who? What's the best win for Utah? Oregon State?
No, they have a close loss to USC.
Utah.
Utah. Well, they're gonna have a close. Funny. They're gonna have a close loss.
Utah and Ole Miss, correct? We're comparing Utah and Ole Miss, right?
Oh yeah. Okay, Utah. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Kentucky? Does anybody on the Utah side, have a win over Kentucky, a Kentucky caliber team? No.
No, because we don't play football in Rupp Arena.
Okay. Their resumes aren't even comparable. They're not.
I'll tell you, Kentucky, Arena League and Rupp Arena. I'll take that. I'll take Kentucky on that any day.
Not comparable. And I will say that there are some coaches, to Jeffrey's point, there are some coaches. Certainly, the coach needs the support of the administration, but there are some coaches doing a bad job out there, not getting the job done. Jeff Collins should have been fired. That's his deal. The coach in college football is not like the NFL. He is responsible for the players. He recruits and signs the players. And Jeff Collins is at an institution where under Paul Johnson, they were winning. Paul Johnson went to 2 Orange Bowls. Paul Johnson finished in the top 10 in the country. Paul Johnson had more ACC championship game appearances than anybody outside of Florida State and Virginia Tech. So Paul Johnson was getting it done at Georgia Tech. Scott Frost is obviously a failure at Nebraska. A lot of guys could win at Nebraska. So just kind of weighing the comments there about the coach's responsibility. Yes, they need administration.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that especially in this new realm of football with the NIL and everything, some of these programs have a hard time competing now, even more than they did before, even though I know there was some funny business going on in the past, but you know what I'm saying? That Georgia Tech, their best player was Jahmyr Gibbs. They lose him to the transfer portal, and we know why. Besides the fact that Alabama's a much better program, Alabama probably has a lot more to give to Jahmyr Gibbs, if you know what I mean. And I'm not saying Jahmyr Gibbs would have had Georgia Tech be better this season, just him. But I'm just saying a lot of these programs, it's almost impossible for them to compete at all. How can you win? When you're like Georgia Tech, you're playing Clemson, and they got how many 5-stars on their team? How many 4-stars on their team? And I'm not saying that's the be-all and end-all, but Georgia Tech has, none. And
triple option.
They got none.
That's it. Triple option.
Georgia Tech was still recruiting in the same range 5 to 10 years ago, and they were winning.
Yeah.
So, yes, you need players. There's no question about that. But Georgia Tech was able to take care of that under a competent head coach. Jeff Collins, obviously, that job was way too big for him. He could not handle it. They've been a dumpster fire since he took them over. So I
agree with that.
Georgia Tech, all the previous coaches won to various degrees. It's been a winning football program going back decades.
I agree with that. You're right about Nebraska, though, but I don't know. It's just interesting. I think that some coaches, you're right, that you aren't good and they're way in over their head, but I just think a lot of them get an unfair shake. So real quick, I know everybody's like, again, I've been on her way too long again, but you talk about, do you think Tom Allen's doing a bad job, or do you think it's or that he doesn't have good enough players? That's kind of a tough question.
Well, first of all, the comment about not good enough players, that's kind of a catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's his responsibility. He recruits the players and signs the players. So he is the general manager of the team as well as the coach. You know, the NFL coach can be a Bill Parcells who says, I didn't get to shop for the groceries. I can only cook the meal. But Tom Allen is his own general manager. So he is responsible for the players. Now, does he have the resources? Does he have the facilities? Does he have everything at his doorstep that Michigan and Ohio State have? Absolutely not. So he cannot be held to that standard. And did he become a dumb head coach overnight? Did he go from being good enough to go 8-4 and go to a bowl game, and then the next year go 6-2, and then suddenly become incompetent? Absolutely not. There's a small margin of error at Indiana. They need to determine, a school like Indiana, what are our expectations? They need to be realistic with themselves and say, what are our expectations? What do we want out of football? Do we want to go to a bowl game, cash a check to be good enough to stay in the Big Ten in these changing times, get to a bowl game so we can cash a check and just make money at the gate and get our TV money and be decent? Or do we want more than that? And how much of a sacrifice are we willing to pay to get there? And can we realistically get there even if we're all in? And what does that look like? Therefore, we can only hold our head coach accountable to what our realistic expectations are.
Well, I think you're right about that too. But here, the other thing about coach, and I should have stressed this a little bit harder too, but I didn't even mention it at all. My bad. But again,
but you didn't know I was going to come in here and go crazy.
Coordinators matter too, though. With Indiana, you're talking about with Tom Allen, he didn't suddenly go from a good coach to a bad coach overnight. And you're right about that, but he had good coordinators. Kalen DeBoer, he hired, who's now the head coach at Washington. We see what he's doing. Kane Womack was the defensive coordinator, and now he's the head coach of South Alabama. Both of them are elite coordinators.
Absolutely.
And Indiana was good. So, again, all the praise is going Tom Allen's way, but how much of it was the coordinators? LSU, you had the coordinators, offensive coordinator Joe Brady. You had the defensive coordinator. They won the title with Joe Burrow. Yeah, they lose all the players, but those coordinators are gone, and they just fall off a cliff.
What's the number one mark of a good leader? What's the number one mark of a good leader? Hire good people.
Hire good people.
Well, I agree, but sometimes it's hard to replace.
That's part of his job.
Yeah, that's true.
And I would argue one of the things we've been talking about kind of as a theme with a lot of these areas is that it's hiring the good people, and it starts with the president, and it goes to the AD, and it goes to whatever the senior associate AD for football, and it goes to the coach.
And that's why Jeffrey's point is valid in some instances. Absolutely. And all your points, considering that, yeah, coaches get thrown in difficult situations at times and don't have the support at the level that they needed against the competition. Are they all working with millions of dollars and great facilities and all that? Yes, until you make it relative to their competition. And then it becomes somebody's, like I make this comment all the time, that most of us can be really good at our jobs, and we're not in direct competition with somebody else. We don't have somebody like actively engaging with us, keeping us from doing our job well. But in competitive athletics, in football in particular, both coaching staffs on a given Saturday could have done a phenomenal job preparing for the game, preparing their athletes, developing them, working on scheme, doing everything. But you know what? When they walk off the field, technically one of them's a failure. Even if they could be the second best in the world at what they're doing, and they're considered a failure. Are they a failure? Really, no. They're really good at what they do. That's why when I rank coaches in various conferences, and then people get upset when they say, why'd you rank him number 12 out of 14? And I'm like, I know that looks bad, but almost all of these guys are really, really good at what they do. So a ranking of number 12 in most conferences out of 14 coaches, that guy is still capable. He's still really good at what he does. It's just somebody's got to lose the games.
Well, I will say
while we've got you guys all together on here, I want to get you guys
group photo.
Well, exactly. We should have a group photo.
We're gonna.
But we've got the stars here, and I want to get for Jeffrey, John, and Mark, get your quick takes on a couple of these games. The three of you guys, we've talked about them, but we want to hear what you think. What do you think about Utah, UCLA? And certainly our good friend TBM here says that he thinks UCLA is going to take care of any of your rankings of Utah going forward.
I love this matchup. It's going to be phenomenal. I don't know what kind of scene we're going to see at the Rose Bowl. Hopefully somebody's going to show up for it and be excited. Because, what UCLA showed us last week was I was extremely impressed. Of course, the score was only close because of a mad rush by Washington, and UCLA showed themselves to be a pretty physical football team, which obviously that's what you got to be against Utah, because they are always physical and never intimidated by anyone. DTR can be hot and cold. So we saw the great DTR last week. Do we get 2 consecutive weeks of great DTR play? So this is going to be a great game. I tend to trust Utah just being super consistent week to week to week over UCLA. Prove it to me again kind of thing.
So about how many points does Utah have to win in order to be better than Ole Miss?
Would
this be a better win than a Kentucky win?
56. Winning by 8 touchdowns, I'll be impressed.
So if they go into the Rose Bowl and beat DTR and this UCLA team, would that be a better win than the Kentucky win? Ole Miss?
They're on the road. It's a comparable game. Who's Kentucky got this week? The resumes are constantly changing, Tim. You can't put me on the spot in a vacuum.
Ole Miss has Vanderbilt.
No,
another one of those quality Ole Miss opponents.
You are telling me who to compare.
Kentucky will be challenged by the mighty Gamecocks.
They shouldn't be.
I'm being sarcastic.
Right.
Well, my thoughts on this game, my first thought on this game is I'm glad I can actually watch the game because of the fact, again, being from the East Coast, I had to go to bed, and I shouldn't even be up right now. I shouldn't be tired of my age. I know, Mark, thanks, but
Yeah, you
again,
should
I
never
am
get tired,
tired
Jeffrey.
officially.
I'm not
But
tired.
again, I can watch this game unlike the Washington game where I only had to go to bed at half. But this game right here is huge for Utah because if Utah can win this game, then they still have a legitimate chance to maybe squeak into the playoff if they win out. And that's if they beat USC, which the odds are not great with the way USC is playing at times. But again, I would say Utah probably squeaks this game out by about 3-7. I mean, I know it's kind of a not so great answer because, UCLA just beat Washington. But the way I do a lot of my predictions on my channel is that when you play a big team like UCLA did with Washington, Utah had an easier game. Usually Utah is going to be a little bit more fresh than UCLA. And I think Utah, and plus, like Mark said, Utah's coaching staff is fantastic. Kyle Whittingham beats Chip Kelly today. Maybe not Chip Kelly of the 2010 in Oregon, but I have Utah probably winning by 3-7.
And if Utah beats UCLA, they are most definitely be the favorite and most likely beating USC in Salt Lake. So if they beat USC and UCLA, and they beat
win out.
and then they beat another USC or Oregon or in the
they could get there.
They're gonna be. They should be in the playoffs because those are that would be a lot of quality wins.
Yeah, I think so. One Scoop John, what do you think about this game?
So the stats actually favor UCLA. If you look at rushing, you look at receiving. I was doing a little bit of a comparison of the two, but just from what I know about both coaches and the coaching staffs the last couple of years of both teams, just something makes me want to give Utah a 3-point win. I just think it has to do with the more recent successes of Utah and what they've been able to do the last couple of years. But it's barely. I mean, it's not a favorite. Obviously, UCLA has the home field advantage, so it's going to be a close game. I'm excited to watch it.
I have a question for the panel too, as the UCLA guy. What does DTR have to do in this game for people that still think it's 2020 and that he's turning the ball over left and right to wake up to the fact that he might actually be the best quarterback in the conference?
Okay, so I saw him take this selfie last year, and I saw him sign the hat. You'll hear no DTR slander from me. Also, his mom liked one of my tweets.
Well, he's only thrown one interception all year.
For even suggesting that DTR could possibly be one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the conference.
Yeah,
you think that's crazy?
There's Caleb Williams out there.
I think you're sleeping on him a lot.
I think it was that Caleb was not even in the discussion. Is I think what the phrase I took exception to.
Well, he was in the discussion. You must have not heard the discussion correctly. Of course, Caleb Williams was in the discussion for the best quarterback in the conference.
Obviously, yeah.
I got to see a lot more out of DTR, Chris, in order for us to start saying, because again, anybody that watched the game against ASU, if he hadn't been Superman, that would have been a hell of a lot closer game than it was. There were at least 4 plays that he not only broke a sack, but picked up a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6. He made some throws in that game that are absolutely NFL throws that DTR can't throw, Chris. Arm talent wise, would you put DTR even in the same category as Caleb Williams?
No, I'm not saying he's the best NFL prospect in this group at all. But I'm saying for one college football season, I will take 5th-year starter 2022 DTR against anyone else in the conference right now for our team.
Everybody in the chat always talks about how you got Jekyll and Hyde Bo Nix, but you can basically say it's Jekyll and Hyde Dorian Thompson Robinson. And again, I don't get to see UCLA too much because they're always on too late. But when I have seen him, he is inconsistent. When he's on, he's fantastic. When he's off, he's not good at all. Sean Clifford of Penn State, Bo Nix, Auburn, and now Oregon, and Dorian Thompson Robinson at UCLA are very similar quarterbacks, even though Dorian Thompson-Robinson is probably a better runner, even though that's kind of debatable as well. But they're all similar because when they're good, they're even potential NFL starting caliber quarterbacks. But when they're bad, they're not even practice squad quarterbacks. They're very inconsistent.
Now that I've popped off, watch him like throw 3 picks this weekend, but really,
Murphy's Law.
I was one of those people where like early DTR career, we have a backup that's like a walk-on. Now his name escapes me, so I'm going to ruin the story. It came in against Oregon that I thought ran the offense way better than DTR because DTR would have these 17-yard, sacks that would ruin drives or, try to make the 60-yard play every play. But it's really just not something that's been part of his game last year or this year at all. Like I used to like harp on this guy all the time and be like, why are we sticking with him? What's the deal? Like how is Garber's going to play? Do we have anyone else? And the 2022 version of him and the 2021 version of him is not anywhere near what he used to be.
All right, guys. Wait, hold on. Friend of the show, Gixxer Squid, has thrown down a challenge. He says UCLA will win. And trust me, if I'm wrong, I'll buy my first UCLA hat and wear it on the show. If I'm right, Jeffrey wears an Ole Miss hat next week on the show.
I don't even have an Ole Miss hat. I mean, my dad's got like Tennessee, Alabama hats, all the SEC school, but he don't have an Ole Miss hat, man.
Well, you know what? I bet Juice Kiffin the dog will send you one if you ask nicely. We'll make it happen. All right, hey guys, we got Jeffrey and Mark. Let's move on. What do you guys think? Let's get the Jeffrey, John, and Mark prediction for USC Washington State.
USC by, I think, I said 7 in the chat earlier, but I'm going to up it to 14 since we've been talking about Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is fantastic. And Lincoln Riley's offense, it's at home. And again, I can watch this game. And I think that they're going to beat Washington State by a decent amount. Like I said, Washington State's a good team, but Cameron Ward, he's really good, but he hasn't been in the FBS level long enough, and he is a little bit mistake-prone right now. And I think the Coliseum is going to be a little bit better than the Rose Bowl in a home field advantage for the Trojans. And I think they're going to win by about 14.
I like it. Mark, the voice of college football. What do you think?
Well, we know that everyone goes to Patreon to get my predictions. So we know that that's the big draw to Patreon. It has nothing to do with anything else what we got there. So I don't want to spoil that for anyone. No,
and now voting on the voice of college football P5 or 12 P5 picks.
Yes, absolutely. Washington State's a pretty impressive football team. I saw them play Oregon. They took that down to the wire. Unfortunately, Cam Ward threw the ball game away late in that one. That was at Pullman, which makes a difference. Going to the Coliseum, I think this is going to be a 3.5 quarter game or early fourth quarter game, and I think Washington State's going to hang in. I think this is, it might have been Tim threw out like a 41-27 score, something like that. That sounds on the money.
I like it. By the way, I love Eddie, friend of the show who calls in a lot. We love, says Wazoo offense is the Kirkland version of USC's offense. 56-17. I like it. One Scoop John, what do you think about this game?
Well, everybody's been talking about USC's offense, but what I think people have been sleeping on is USC's defense. And I've been saying all year that Alex Grinch is underrated as a DC. I could see this being a defensive struggle. And we've seen games this year where USC's defense has actually bailed them out. You would never have expected that going in. I could see this being a 24-21 USC victory.
You're right there. I mean, they have a top 30 in scoring offense and top 30 in total defense this year. Might be 31. I can't remember. I think they popped 31. So yeah, my goal was to get them under 50. With their offense, they got like a top 10, maybe top 7 offense. So if you can keep that in the low 30s or creep into the 20s, I think we will be a force to reckon with.
Now, you guys, Mark put out a great video today on coaches and hot seats and seats getting warm. Mark, I think you were spot on concerns in Palo Alto. You know, if they continue to do bad, what's going to happen? Now, perhaps fans will be too distracted by the unveiling of the new Stanford tree. But if what's on the field gets real ugly against Oregon State, could this get bad fast?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there with David Shaw because he's so well respected across the country and in that conference. And Tony, you know that better than I do. And he's got so much equity at that school.
He's a phenomenal man, phenomenal leader, considered a revered coach, but it's just getting ugly.
Yeah, so Oregon State, interesting situation there with Chance Nolan, whether he's going to play. Gulbranson, the backup, came in and played better than Chance Nolan, but still gave away the ball a couple times against Utah. So this could be a more competitive game than we anticipated a week ago. Oregon State just seems to be a little reeling. They put so much into that USC effort at home. We're so geeked up and fired up for that. Gave it their all at Utah and just ran out of gas and, you know, just fell apart late third quarter, fourth quarter in that game. So, you know, Stanford might be due for one of their, even the bad Stanford of the last 3 or 4 years has that one game in them every year where they jump up and scare or beat somebody.
Man, but Oregon is just so good, and Stanford's defense is so bad. Like their defense hasn't been good since Derek Mason. When Derek Mason left, I think the shine came off. He loses Derek Mason and he loses Bloomgren as the offensive line coach. You know, that's what I thought of Stanford. When I used to think of Stanford, as much as I thought of the offensive line, I really thought about that front seven. Losing both of those guys, I mean, I think they're statistically on the bottom, like very bottom in defense, and I think everyone's underestimating this OSU offense. It is that good. So I just don't see how that defense could even hold a stick to Oregon State.
Well, my opinion on this game is how you just said what I was kind of talking about earlier about how David Shaw is a respected guy and across the country. And again, I know watching Stanford when I was younger, how great they were, Christian McCaffrey, Bryce Love, Andrew Luck, all that. But what you just said, that they haven't been as good since Derek Mason left. Coordinators matter. And so, again, it's all David Shaw when it's going good. It's all David Shaw when it's going bad. And then people, it's Jim Harbaugh, all this kind of stuff. Again, I don't think it's all on David Shaw. I think, again, with NIL, some schools are being hurt. The transfer portal, and like you were saying, Tony, a couple weeks ago about how Stanford, they can't get transfers at all because of their academics, and no one's going to go there. And they're losing transfers because of that. That's why Stanford's not as good. I don't think it's all necessarily on David Shaw, even though, again, you could say that he can get better coordinators, he could recruit better. But, again, there's a lot of circumstances that are stacking up against them. It is at home, but Stanford's, like Mark said about Stanford pulling it up, so they usually are like Purdue, and they do it against a ranked team like they did with USC and Oregon last year. Oregon State's not ranked, so I got to go with Oregon State by 7.
I think that's right. But and guys, real quick, David, who's in the back room, I can't see if are you there? Oh, okay.
David didn't take my place. I'll jump out.
All right.
I crashed your party. My bad.
Hey, no, first of all, it's always your party.
Anytime, Mark. Anytime.
Hold on. Mark, before you go anywhere, everybody in the chat, everybody in the stream, everybody in the room, let's give Mark a round of applause because the content that he's been putting out has been awesome. And what an exciting football season. And Mark, we really appreciate everything you do to create and nurture and build and grow the community.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you guys in the crowd, don't worry. I'll try to troll them in again sometime this season.
Yeah, that was brilliantly done.
Something else to figure out something else we can get it back for.
This was you guys. I saw that Ole Miss thing, and I just saw Tim going like reeling him back in. It was awesome. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us. All right, hey, we're adding real quick. David, welcome back. Welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen. I don't know how I replace the voice of college football, but I'm going to give it
order.
Talk about a tough act to follow, but I'm going to give it my best try. Wanted to comment by the way on a couple of games in the Pac-12. By the way, this is not going to be a Pac-12 show for another couple years. Then we're going to have to like merge here with the UCLA.
Exactly.
You, me,
Exactly.
one scoop, and
it'll be the Big
Yeah.
Pac show.
is that
Big
what we're going to
Pac.
call it?
The
Okay.
Big Pac
I like
show.
that. I like
Well, already
it.
bring Indiana into discussion anyway, so it already is the Big Pack.
Exactly. It's a slow mesh like David Shaw's offense now.
Yeah, the Pac-12 show's on borrowed time here, gentlemen, so to speak. I did want to get to the Utah UCLA game. I have a feeling, and I'm interested to hear our UCLA fans' perspective. I saw the over at 64 and a half. Are you thinking that this is a game that's in the 30s, or what do you see this?
What do you think? Do you think that's lower because of like what Utah's defense historically is? I'm just trying to think of like what your angle.
Well,
like, what's surprising to you about the total?
I thought it's a little bit low. Just also because UCLA's offense is so hot right now, I thought maybe it'd have been a little bit higher. And I in general, I just kind of wanted to see what kind of game you're expecting. You're expecting more, let's say, 28-24 or 38-34?
I would say I would guess 38-34 if I had to guess, just because I think the theme of our season is going to be in a lot of these games is like just like it like thought it was against Washington before when we talked is can we outscore them? Now, granted, our secondary did some nice jobs with some interceptions, disguising coverage and confusing Penix on a couple of those interceptions that we had. But it's, that's the best half that they've had. The first half of that Washington game was the best half that secondary's had all year. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them give up big plays to plenty of teams this year, including Utah. Okay. So, I think for UCLA to win games, oftentimes it's going to have to outscore people. So yeah, if I had to guess, I would say closer to the 38-34 than the 28-24.
Okay.
But
yeah, I actually like both quarterbacks and both running backs. I like Thomas, the Utah running back. I think is pretty solid. Obviously, Charbonnet's been good for you guys. I like both quarterbacks. Yep. That's why I'm wondering if I'm leaning towards a little bit more of a higher scoring game in this one. By the way, did you guys do early season Pac-12 picks as far as picking your champion? And did you guys have Utah? I had Utah as a trendy playoff pick like the rest of like a lot of college football. I don't know where you guys were at on that.
I think until someone proves otherwise, I think Utah is the champ of the Pac-12. Going back to your question before, the reason why I think that total's lower is because both teams have great defenses.
Okay. Yeah, I like both.
Sorry, I used the word great. Sorry.
Yeah,
I got caught up in the moment. UCLA has a solid, statistically, and that might have to do with who they played, but they have statistically a solid defense, except for their secondary is very suspect.
And Utah has a good defense, but not a great defense like they have had historically. Some years where they're just like absolutely shut down. There's some things about them that they're not like the Utah. There's some years where Utah is just like dominant on defense.
Well, statistically, Chris, they're 14 points a game. That's pretty dominant. And
points wise, but Oregon State moved the ball up and down the field on them. Again, I know we made the point earlier that yards don't mean points, but over the course of like a long enough sample size, they tend to. And that Oregon State team that has all kinds of issues at quarterback right now still move the ball up and down. Utah's like it's a good defense. I think it's the best defense in the Pac-12, but I think it's like nationally, it's like somewhere in the 25 to 30 range.
Yeah, I like both quarterbacks. I think it's gonna be
real
a higher
quick, guys. I'm also bringing it. We've got our little crowded right now. I'm gonna move just a couple folks to the back room. You don't have to go anywhere. We still want you in for final thoughts. We just making a little more room. Jeffrey, I know you were rolling out. Any final words, real quick?
I was just getting my plug in because I was about out of juice on my computer. That's why I blanked out. But I mean, I can't wait for the Pac-12. Games this weekend. It's gonna be fantastic. One more thought on Utah. I will say too that Utah Someone said that they had a lot of super seniors last year, and that is true. And they lost a lot of them, obviously because they're graduating and everything. And that's probably why Utah's maybe not as good as they were last year. I think they are a good team, but like people were talking about with Cam Rising, I mean, maybe not being as good. I just don't think Utah as a whole is maybe as good as they were last year once Cam Rising was the quarterback. But they're still a good team, and that's why I do think they're going to beat UCLA, but it's going to be close. But yeah, I think Utah's just a little bit worse this year, but not by much. But I mean, I don't. But on the point of saying I gotta go, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm good. I'm wired. If you guys want,
you are okay. Stick around. Stick around then. We're also throwing in a good friend of the show, Desmond Cox, who is a guru on USC and UCLA. Desmond, welcome.
How's it going, guys?
Good. Desmond, real quick, while we're still on there, before we move on from this game, what are your thoughts on UCLA, Utah?
Yeah, I think I just agree with everybody saying. I know the I forgot his name, but asked, kind of what the score is going to be. And from a betting perspective, I always like to take the high pace home offense against, whatever defense. So if it's a high paced offense that's really good at moving the ball, that can score, they're going to score regardless. You rarely see a team that has juice coming in as a home game that can move the ball, that can score at will, get stopped. So I don't think Utah's going to be able to stop them. I don't think UCLA is going to be able to stop Utah, and I think UCLA is going to score points. So I definitely think it's going to be above that 68 total or whatever. I think it's going to be in the 30s, maybe one team in the 40s. So, yeah, I do agree with that. I think DTR, we'll see how he plays in the first half, and, we'll kind of get a good gauge on how that game's going to go.
Hey, I made pesos on UCLA this week. I might as well make some on the over in this one.
Do it again. Hey,
yeah.
what do you guys think about the SC Washington State game?
I like USC in this game by at least 2 scores. I just think they're that
knew
much
we
better.
liked you.
No, I think they're a better team. I was going to say, by the way, what do you guys think there's a chance if both you and UCLA get through Utah that maybe we see a classic at the end of the year between USC and UCLA?
How awesome would that be?
Yeah, old school. Is that one in the Rose Bowl, by the way?
It's in the Rose Bowl this year.
Yeah.
It is. And for those of you guys who don't know, just a little old school thing, USC and UCLA shared the LA Coliseum, which is on USC's campus, but they shared the LA Coliseum for the first 60 years that that UCLA played football. So one of the new traditions that Pete Carroll restarted up is that they both wear home jerseys. So it's one of the only games in football where you'll see both. It's USC in the bright red and USC and UCLA in the light blue. So it's just an awesome game under that LA sun.
Didn't one team do that on accident and they got flagged or something, and that point forward it was kind of a tradition?
No. What happened, actually, they knew that was going to happen because the NCAA, in order for the NCAA had to allow it, but for the NCAA to allow it, they had to have a vote. And they couldn't have a vote until later the next month. And so the deal that Pete Carroll and Rick Neuheisel played for UCLA back in the old day. So the deal that Pete Carroll and Rick Neuheisel made is that USC would show up and then would be flagged for wearing the wrong jersey. And the penalty for that is you lose a timeout under the NCAA rules of the time. So UCLA then immediately called a timeout of their own, so they both started the first half with only 2 timeouts. But it was a planned thing with UCLA with Rick Neuheisel and Pete Carroll.
I kind of want to point this out too, is that I know we've talked about USC's 2-game schedule, Washington State and Utah. UCLA has Utah and then at Oregon. I think they have the harder two-game slate, and obviously, you would think they go 1-1. It's a good possibility they go 0-2, or they could go 2-0. We just don't know with this team.
UCLA does get a bye before they go to Autzen, but you're right. That's going to be a tough stretch. And Utah turns out, I think this 2-game stretch is a little bit more problematic for them than the beginning of the year, with UCLA being 5-0. So they got to go to the Rose Bowl. They're going to have a physical game against UCLA. They're going to have to figure out DTR, Bobo, and Zach Charbonnet, along with their defense. And so they're going to have to go back to Rice Eccles. And it's going to be a great game with SC and in Utah. But they're going to have to go back to back. So this is going to be an interesting 2-game stretch for Utah and USC.
Hey, I threw this out to Mark last night about who's the best quarterback in the Pac-12. You guys were kind of touching on it. I don't know if you guys want to rank the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the Pac-12. We have a USC and UCLA fan here, so I thought that would be an interesting perspective. I know a lot of people are on Caleb Williams early, but now we have, you know what I mean?
And why don't we have 2 people picked to do that, just so we can go because we're running a little high on time.
Just curious.
Chris, why don't you go, and then Tim, you want to do yours?
What happened? Sorry, I was typing in chat.
Oh, Chris, give your top few quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and then Tim, you want to do yours?
Top 2? Sure.
Top 4. I think David was asking. Top 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, go first,
right.
then Tim.
All right. DTR, Caleb Wilson.
Watch it.
Caleb's 2, Penix 3, 4. Now I'm struggling. Bo Nix to shock the world. So it's like the Pac-12 has 2 reformed quarterbacks that step up and shock the world.
You're taking Bo Nix over
anymore.
Cam Rising. Wow.
Cam hasn't looked that great this year, to be completely honest.
Okay.
Right. That is true. And Bo Nix has played. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I'm going with Caleb Williams. So she said Caleb Williams. I'm going to say Dorian Thompson Richardson. And
is that on purpose?
I'm just messing with you, Chris. And then I'm gonna make Mikey G. I'll make Mikey G happy here. I'm gonna say the way he's been playing, I might even pop up. I'm gonna pop up Bo Nix because Bo Nix has been playing solid to 3. I know I can't believe I'm saying this. I feel like I'm gonna have to go take a shower afterwards. And then I'm gonna slide Cam Rising into 4.
No, Penix.
Can I do mine real quick? Just real quick.
No, you know what? Here's my thing with Penix. Wait, sorry. My thing with Penix. So here's my Penix thing. Penix, when he has a nice clean pocket. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I know that Jeffrey's gonna be mad at me. Penix with a clean pocket is got the arm talent and he is a machine. But like we saw different Penix when you had some pass rush on him and you had to have him move around that pocket and get hurried. He didn't look like the same guy. And I'm wondering now they're gonna start playing the tougher teams in the conference if that's gonna happen to him more often. That's
Can I
just
do
me.
my picks real quick?
Absolutely.
Penix number 1.
I think that Caleb Williams is number 1 because he's got the best offensive coach and he's got the best offensive players around him. I think he is really, really good. So I'll go with him number 1. Number 2, I probably have to go with overall. And again, I know we're ranking off recency bias, but I'll go with Cam Rising number 2 just because of what he did last year. He's kind of not playing as well this season, but I'll go with him number 2. I'm actually going to go with Bo Nix number 3 because he's playing fantastic right now, and at his best, he's elite. And number 4, I probably will go with a clean pocket, Michael Penix. With a bad pocket, he's not even in this discussion, but in a good pocket, he's number 4. And then I would put Dorian Thompson-Robinson right there.
Wow.
Ooh, I like that. Hey, and by the way, really quickly, we're talking about how they played through 5 games, correct? We're not saying them as a quarterback.
As
so
of
I
right
want
now.
to make that clear. If we're talking about them as a quarterback, I don't put Bo Nix that high. I put Bo Nix because he deserves it, and the way he's been playing, I have to put him there.
I mean, I put Tanner McKee way higher and if we're talking like NFL and whatnot, you put Tanner McKee about 10 spots higher than I have him as of like this season.
Hey Jeffrey, let me ask you. I got a quick question for Jeffrey. How much of Penix's success in 20 was a product that he had Philyor and Freifogel?
Well, again, I think a lot of it was because of the fact that they had, Kalen DeBoer in 2019. And then in 2020, it was a lot of luck because they said that, and you're right about Philyor and Freifogel, but it was because I read somewhere that when Penix was at Indiana in 2020, that he had like a 70% completion percentage while being hit, or like when he was being rushed, which was the best in the NFL. And a lot of those throws that he made when I was watching those games, they just squeaked in there and it got really lucky. And then in 2021 and against UCLA, he just looked completely like kind of scared. Not as scared against UCLA, but in 2021, you could tell he was still nervous about the ACL. In 2020, and he was still, nervous about getting hit and hurt again. And he wasn't the same guy. And I do agree that Filier and Frotho had a lot to do with it. But when he's right and he's not scared, then he's fantastic. And he can make any throw. But UCLA put a lot of pressure on him, and he did make some bad throws. So I don't know. And I do agree, if you're talking about just these 5 games this season, then Dorian Thompson-Robinson is in my top 4. I was doing their full careers because DTR has been too inconsistent. But if you're doing for just the start of the season, I'll probably go with Caleb Williams, probably Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Penix, Bo Nix, then Cam Rising. In that order.
And really quickly here, the chat, Ralph, I see that you conveniently left out the 2 very painful interceptions in an 8-point game. So that's what I'm talking about. Those are some good numbers, but you left out 2 interceptions, buddy.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, I was going to just name my top 2. Williams and
not bad.
I'm going to be shocked to say Bo Nix. We have 2 new guys here, and I know it's through 5 games, but I'm also kind of looking towards the next couple of games that they're going to have. Those 2 have done it in the biggest stages, in the biggest games, in the biggest stadiums in their past. Caleb Williams down there in Texas, the Red River Rivalry coming in there, last-minute drives. He did that against Oregon State this year. That obviously Nix at Auburn had his battles with Alabama and all those SEC teams. So the way those guys are playing right now, I mean, they're killing it. And then the next couple of games are going to be huge. I'll just lean on their experience.
Interesting.
All right, guys, we are getting about ready to wrap up. Any final for our new guys that have joined us? Any other big final predictions you guys want to make for the games this weekend?
I'm interested to see if there's an upset in Baton Rouge. If LSU pulls off the upset. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you meant college football at large. My bad.
Yeah. Will smack us if we allow some Brian Kelly slander on here.
I hear you.
Yeah, I'll just give my prediction for the top 2 games of the conference. USC, I think they probably in between 17 and 21. I know somebody put 17 points for Washington State. This defense is not that good. I know we'll turn the ball over or turn them over 2 or 3 times probably, just the way how Ward is under pressure. But, I mean, they're still going to move the ball. They're still going to score. USC's offense still moves the ball way too fast. It scores too fast for the defense for it to be a low possession game. So they're going to get their points. I mean, I think USC will probably score around 48, 45, and then 28 probably. 28.
I like it. And real quick, I want your pick, Desmond, on Eddie Rainey has got a real good question for us. And I don't know the answer to this. Who would win the game, Mater Dei or Colorado?
That's a good one. Let's see here. I'd still probably side on Mater Dei, but if we mix Mater Dei and John Bosco, give me Mater Dei and John Bosco.
The answer, that's what I put in the chat. The answer is Bosco.
Yeah.
Right.
And we got a Bosco alum right up there. Guys, I honestly, I hate to say this, and I don't mean to sound like a dick, but I honestly think Mater Dei plus Bosco would be Colorado. All right. Hey, Desmond, what was your other game? You had one other one you wanted to do.
Oh yeah, it was Utah. Utah UCLA. Oh God, I think that's between the 3 and 7 point game, like people have been saying. I'm actually probably going to lean more UCLA. I know it's not normally what we're supposed to do, as USC fans, but I mean probably 41-38, 38-35, somewhere around there. And I think in that home environment, DTR is going to play pretty good at home like he normally does. He gets rolling, and I think they have a really good chance.
I'm going to go 35-31 Utah. I'll go with my preseason Pac-12 pick. I think it'll be a great game.
David, I think that's a good pick. Hey, just want to give a shout out. Traveling Fools is in the house. Traveling Fools hosts Mark's Voice of College Football Miami post-game show, which is a great thing everybody should check out. All right, guys, we are way over time, but we want to give everybody a chance. Final thoughts on the games this weekend. Desmond, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really focused on many of the other games besides the top ones, honestly. We kind of have some crapshoots in there. I want to, I've already talked about USC and Utah. I actually want to see if Arizona can keep their high-paced offense up. They've been fairly good on offense. and they look decent at sometimes. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
That's going to be a good one. All right. Hey, Desmond, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. All right.
Appreciate
Who's
it,
up next? David, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say I think USC is going to continue to roll this week. I like them by at least 2 scores. I got in on that USC stock early, so I told Mark to.
You did.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Utah to win the Pac-12. I still think you guys are probably the 2 best teams, but I think you guys handle Washington State this week. But Colin Coward, by the way, still thinks you guys are a couple years. A USC fan, Colin Coward, still thinks you guys are a couple years away.
He's probably right.
Yes.
A couple years away from competing for a national championship.
Yes.
But not a couple years away from making the playoffs.
Yes.
David, one of the things you probably didn't see our post-game show. We talked a little bit about that. And one of the things that we talked about was really the idea that to USC fans, when they talk about what they want to be, they don't want to just qualify for the playoffs. They want to win the thing.
Makes sense.
And I think we're definitely probably a couple years away from that. George, and to our we got a lot of SEC fans in the chat, and you guys know, those of you who watch the show know that we recognize that Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. I mean, those are some seriously great teams, and we look forward to getting the Trojans back in that realm where we need to be.
Yeah, the Big Ten West needs you guys in a couple years.
We'll do our best. David, hey, thanks for joining us. We
Pleasure,
appreciate
guys.
it.
Take care.
We'll
now.
talk to you soon. All right. Will, you're up next.
Yeah,
Your thoughts on this weekend? We got the Irish heading for a big one.
Yep, we got a big one.
Honorary Pac-12 team Irish.
Jeffrey, can you make a preview?
Yeah, I can if you want to. I usually on my channel, it's funny. I try to stay away from the big games because everybody else is doing them. But for you, I'll do a Notre Dame. I'll do it tomorrow.
Thanks, buddy.
They're playing at BYU, and
It's
that's gonna be very interesting.
It's at Vegas. It's in Vegas, so neutral
Okay,
site.
yes. So technically, it's still technically a road game for me, even though it's in Vegas. I don't know, man. I'll do the preview. I won't spoil who I think's going to win. But that's going to be a very interesting game because Notre Dame is starting to get things right. And like people have said, BYU is kind of not playing too well. I mean, the Baylor win, but like people said, maybe Baylor's not as good. But then they beat Utah State, and they were kind of struggling. And obviously, Oregon killed them. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I'm actually looking forward to that game.
And I'm also looking forward to these Pac-12 games, man. Like, if UCLA can get it rolling and really, beat Utah, like, who knows, man? The Pac-12, anyone could beat anyone any week. So I'm really excited to see how the Pac-12 is going to shake out down the stretch.
It's going to be fun. Hey, we want to give just real quick a couple things here, guys. We've got a couple of live shows coming up on Thursday. Mark's got 2:30 with Zach Smith, and then Miami Live at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. tomorrow is going to be a call-in show. So those are going to be really cool. And then we also want to give a plug for those folks, for the Trojan fans out there or the Trojan haters, because fans and haters alike should both be checking it out. Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire does an awesome show, and it's every Monday now, and they've moved it to a great time for people to watch. So it's Monday, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. So everybody, be sure to check that out. And then for again Trojan fans and Trojan haters, USC Postgame Live is going to be right here, right after the game. So right about 11 p.m. Eastern. So we hope you guys can join us for that.
And Ben Exploring with Ben will be doing the post-game show for the Oregon Ducks as well.
Very much. Will, any final thoughts here as we get ready for the games?
Yeah, just Ben does a great job with Oregon. I love how when I go on the Oregon show and I talk about Oregon, people still heckle me about Notre Dame. It never gets old.
Well, D4 will follow you to the ends of the earth to heckle you about Notre Dame.
Yes, he will.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome.
And everybody,
Thanks
by the
for
way,
having me on.
subscribe. Will ND on you guys' name right there. Will ND. Just do a search on YouTube for Will ND. Or some. Can somebody plug that in the chat really quick so everybody can subscribe? Will does great, funny things. And are you going to do the big live reaction show this weekend?
Yep. If I can everything should work out, and I should be able to do it. So it should be fun.
All right, I'm going to be watching when we watch that SC game.
Of course,
Cheer for old Notre Dame, Will.
Wake up the echoes, hearing his name. Yep.
Send a volley, cheer on high. See, guys, I know that song. Tim's vetoing it. All right, thanks, Will. We'll talk to you a little bit.
Of course.
All right, Jeffrey, give us your final thoughts here for the weekend.
The last game that we didn't really ever get to because I guess you're gonna roll through all the games we never got to. But that Oregon-Arizona game, I think I saw somebody say in the chat that Oregon hasn't won at Arizona since 2011. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's going to continue. I think Oregon's going to get the win. I know Arizona's kind of a little bit better.
Uh-oh. Did Jeffrey freeze or did I? Oh. Did Jeffrey freeze up?
Yeah.
All right. Well, he gave us his prediction. Oh, he vanished. All right. Chris, you want to give us your final thoughts on the game? Oh, wait, hold on. Here's Jeffrey's back.
I'm sorry. It's my darn internet. I'm sorry. But I was just saying that Oregon's too talented. They won at Washington State. They're not going to lose at Arizona. I think Oregon's going to get the win. And, so Oregon, I mean, it's tough to win in the desert, but Arizona's not there yet. They're getting better, but I think Oregon's going to get the win. I think already touched on all these other games. I'll just say thank you guys so much for having me on this long. I mean, it's y'all's show, and I feel like I'm invading it, man. So
hey, we like having you.
Thank you.
Hey, so the USC game is at a real regular normal person time this week. So feel free to call us in after the USC game too.
Sounds great. I will do that if I can remember.
All right. Hey, good luck to your Hoosiers, Jeffrey, and everybody. Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports, check it out. He has great stuff. You'll get to see his previews there. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, TBM, you're up to bat.
Yeah, thanks everyone for calling in and hanging out in the chat. And it was great to get that win against UW last week as a UCLA fan, and it's sort of at the point we've been at many times recently where the hopes are high, and oftentimes lately when the hopes have been high, it's been followed by disappointment. But I'm going to keep the faith, and I'm looking forward to anticipating hopefully it's a great game and it's as close and great as everyone thinks it is, and we pull it out. And I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck to the Bruins. All right, LBC, you're up. You're on mute.
This is going to be an interesting weekend. You have Washington and Oregon going down to the desert, places where they've struggled historically. But this is show me Saturday. Now, Oregon showed that it can win on the road at Pullman, and Washington did not against a better opponent in UCLA. Can Washington rebound and beat Arizona State convincingly and stay in the top 25? Can Oregon, who has lost the last two times down in the desert in Tucson, can they compete against Arizona? Can they win on the road? Can they silence some of the doubters, the haters that Kentucky and Ole Miss and Wake Forest are better than Oregon? Some of the comments that we saw in the chat. This is their time. It's their opportunity. If you're a quality program looking for a New Year's Six bowl and a Pac-12 championship berth, you got to win this game. Okay? You got to win this game. And then UCLA and Utah are very intriguing because Utah is the favorite, but UCLA is coming on strong. So this is UCLA's chance to prove a number of things, to prove that DTR is DTR, to prove that UCLA is a program back. I think their fans have to prove that they're a legitimate program. Take the tarps off, fill the Rose Bowl, and let's see what you got. And then there's SC and there's Washington State. USC has to play a consistent game. You've got the stage. You've got national TV on Fox. Go out there and take care of business like you're supposed to. And let's see 4 quarters of football. So a lot of teams have a lot to prove, and we're going to see who's real and maybe who's not so much. This is a defining weekend. Thanks to all of our callers, our people in the chat. We appreciate your support, and fight on, and good luck to your teams this weekend.
And a special tease next week, Rick. The fans want to know about the records in the background. So maybe if they tune in next week, they can get more details.
Oh, yeah, you can go ahead and somebody pick a number right now, and I'll pull out the album and let you know what it is. Give me a number 1 through 40. Anybody?
TF would it's Traveling Fools. He would take 5, the number of the Miami National Championships.
Okay, hold on, fools.
Okay, guys, we got a live reveal right here. A live reveal. Record number 5 in honor of Traveling Fools, 5 national championships.
Oh, this is from the state of Florida. I think he's from Gainesville. Oh, no, wait. No, I'm sorry. Wrong one. But this would be little Eric Clapton. I thought it was a Tom Petty album. Oops.
Oh, there we go. I like it.
So there you go.
Well chosen. LBC, thanks again.
Thank you, guys. Fight on.
All right, Tim, you're up to bat.
I just put the in the chat the fact that we were talking about Bosco and that Mater Dei game, and I saw this graphic. It just blew my mind. I mean, I know that both programs been rolling for well over a decade now, but the fact that they have 71 players with I almost said Division I FBS scholarship offers just shows you how awesome this game is. If any of you guys can tune into it, you're in for a good show. You might see maybe a guy that might be on your team next year. So that was pretty amazing to see that stat. But again, overall, we're seeing in the chat, and we expected it, and we had it coming. But I like how you put it, Tony, is the fact that this is where the Pac-12 is normally. What we've seen for the past couple of years is not what the Pac-12 is. You know, teams like Washington and USC have really let the conference down the last 3-4 years. But we're starting to see some coaching hires that are elevating the program back to where it should be. And I'm thinking that this year, we had someone talking in the chat that even an 11-1, which would be a 12-1 Utah team, would get left out for a conference runner-up Michigan or a conference runner-up Georgia or whoever, Alabama or OSU. I think those days are over. There would be a huge outcry if that happened. Because again, in order for Utah to make it, a 12-1 Utah would have to beat Oregon and UCLA and USC, and then beat one of those again. And I'm sorry, you know, I have all respect for the SEC there is, but the days of leaving conference champions out that have a resume like that, I think are over.
All right. Hey, Tim, thank you again. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys because Mark, and especially also to thank Mark for giving everybody this platform for all of you guys to help chat about the Pac-12. We've had a blast chatting with you guys in the chat. We've had such a great time with everybody calling in, and it really means a lot to us, but it also is fun, and we hope that it was fun for you. So most importantly, we want to thank you guys for taking a couple hours of your time and joining us to chat. It's going to be a fun weekend, guys. Josh Pate likes to talk about how this is the every given Saturday year, and he called last year the Renaissance season. This is really the Pac-12 Renaissance season here. We talked a little bit ago about how 7 of the 12 Pac-12 teams in only the last 2 years got rid of their coaches. A lot of the schools have gotten rid of their presidents. They've cleaned house in their ADs, and they're really trying to put the conference back together to make it as strong as it always has been. And so it's going to be quite a ride, and we really appreciate your joining us to be a part of it. And we hope you'll keep joining us throughout the season. All right, everybody, take care. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. Enjoy yourselves, and fight on.